you go to live and then click it, I'll send you the link actually in chat.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll have to mute you have to like pause it, or you'll be looking at it all the time.
Mm.
Then there's a chat on the right. There we go.
Pause it and just use it for the chat. Right.
Yeah, just on the right, which is live chat.
Yeah, I see it.
You have to pause it, or you'll be hearing yourself after that.
I did pause it. Yeah.
All right. It's chaos. All right, here we go. And then let me go back to Twitter.
Why does it say create a channel to join chat? Because I don't have a YouTube account? Surely not.
I don't know. All right. Cool. Let's see what we got here. All right, friends. It is the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up, and as we sit here and watch the demise of Google Hangouts, you notice that the lower third is gone.
I did notice. I went looking for it because every time I turn this on, Hanselman is like, dude, sort out your lower third. This is ridiculous every time.
Yeah.
And today, the one day that I remembered it, it's not a thing anymore.
It's gone. So yes, we'll figure it out eventually. We've got lots of options. Also, John Galloway is not here. Damien is not here. Glenn and I left alone.
Yes, the world has gone mad.
The world has gone mad. This beard continues to take over my face in inappropriate ways, and I'm just not really sure how I feel about it. And considering leaving. Additionally, I am on my Surface Book here rather than my main computer, which is over here to the side. So I'll give you a brief tour of the house. Here's that place.
It's amazing. This is what everybody wants.
That's what everyone wants. Just
more tours of the Hansel rig.
Doing important things like updating my NVIDIA Shield right here. Working on this this FOSS cam got its firmware bricked, so I've got to shush into that. Fixing my 3D printed Raspberry Pi, which has a battery. But more importantly, and why I want to talk to you, Glenn, is that I am going to be at the .NET Nuke Summit. .NET Nuke, of course, the popular and ever so famous open source CMS from the Nuke friends. So while we don't have John Galloway and we don't have Damo, we do have you. And we also, and this is why it all comes together beautifully, let me go and share my screen. And let's do this. So it'll be a little different today, folks. If you don't like it, leave. I don't mean it like that. Leave with a happy and free heart. Okay. So today, Glenn, the last couple of days, Maria put out the final training course for Microsoft Virtual Academy.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this was fun. Okay,
so there's intro, and here's cross-platform.
Yeah.
So we have the new cross-platform course that we promised to do only 18 months ago. Of course, it is completely obsolete at this point.
Yeah. So here's the thing. You say that. Now, one of the things that we did in that video, and I looked at this the other day, yesterday or the day before, because I got a tweet from somebody who'd watched this.
Yeah.
And we, in that video 4 months ago, I think it was, according to Docker Hub, built an ASP.NET Core application using the released bits at the time, pushed it to Docker Hub. And today, everybody is still just doing Docker run, and that application runs fine. And it's amazing.
So that was here, if I recall.
Yeah, that's the one. Fancy pants.
Fancy pants.
Yeah,
so 4 months ago.
4 months ago, right? And people who have never used Docker before, right now, like yesterday and the day before, are watching that video and running an ASP.NET Core application straight from that repo, and everything is glorious.
And it runs just fine.
It runs just fine. Cool. I think it had a couple of hundred and something downloads so far. So, you know, there's a few people who are following through with our tutorials. Right. And that, of course, is the whole point, right? This can work just fine. Yeah. If there is one like massive takeaway to go from Docker, like one of the massive takeaways from Docker is that, which is, 5 months from now, that image will run exactly as it runs today without you doing anything. All right. Assuming you do it right, because you're holding it wrong, obviously, if it doesn't.
Yeah, indeed. Excellent. Cool. So what I wanted to ask you about and talk to you about and kind of share is what I've been doing this afternoon. So this afternoon, I am getting ready to go on a flight. I'll be leaving on Thursday morning to go to Denver, where I'm going to address the .NET Nuke Summit. Okay. So I was hanging out with Jeff Fritz on the phone here, and we thought it would be cool if I just downloaded the .NET Nuke source code. I could have just installed it, but I actually downloaded the entire source code here for the thing, and I put it into Visual Studio 2017 RC.
This is obviously what everybody does when they think I'd like to try out .NET Nuke is, just let me go get the source code.
Well, but I'm a teacher at heart, so I want things to go a certain way, and I had this idea, and I thought, if I'm going to show the thing, I should show it properly and, go a little over the top. Make sure this is broadcasting full screen here. I want to go ahead and click on myself, so this way it won't go away when you grunt. All right. Okay. So I did that, and then I right-clicked on it, and I said add Docker support.
Right. Yeah, with the new Docker tooling support in there, which is amazing.
Right. Like cool stuff in there. Like you do. And zoom in.
Yeah. Docker run project.
So this is beautiful. You like that? It did not work out like I thought it would. Hang on. Oh, I forgot. I have a Surface.
You do.
And you know what that means?
You have awesome tools and touchscreen.
I have a pen. All of this work and zooming.
It's going to all pay off in a few seconds.
So that I might go like this.
Look at that. Yeah. Glorious.
Huh?
$1 billion worth of engineering.
$1 billion worth of R&D. Pull that off right there. And we're back to 1998 for my tablet PC. Okay. Anyway, it says start project. So I can go and Docker this thing. Now, when I right-click and did that, it made this file here, this Docker compose. So you know this stuff more than I do. I'm guessing it just generated that by looking at the image.
Yep, looking at your project and working out what it should do.
Yeah, and then it made one for debug. And this is interesting.
Yeah.
So I am in Docker right here in the corner, and I am in Windows container mode right now.
Yeah.
So I want to make this is full framework, right? This is .NET Nuke web forms plus MVC plus a bunch of stuff. It's the complete deal.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm not sure they explicitly support doing this either. Their tooling. I'm not sure yet.
It worked just fine. Appears to. I mean, it got the label. It got the label right. I didn't do anything.
Clearly, that means it supported if it worked just fine.
.NET Nuke doesn't know anything about it. The point is, think about this in the sense of you've got a big, very successful, very popular Windows app that works just fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Windows 10, and I want this to run on Windows, Server 2016, and host it in Docker and run it in IIS.
Yeah. That's totally the scenario, right? It's like, hey, it's kind of what some of the people around here who have been working, like Steve Lasker, who's the program manager in charge of these Docker tooling that you played with, the add Docker support bit, refers to the lift and shift scenario. It's like, I've got an application, I love containers, I kind of want to shift what I have now without making too many changes straight into containers, and Windows Server Core lets you do it because the .NET framework, as you know, it exists. It has IIS, so you can just run. Okay. So let's look at your Docker. So tell
me if this is right. Here's .NET Nuke. This says 10 gigs, but that's really visual. That's not Docker. That's not .NET Nuke. That's Windows.
Yeah, and the majority of that is also shared across all those 10 gigs that you've got there. See, they're all exactly the same size. There's .NET Nuke website, Docker web forms. They're all 10 gigs, right?
Right.
They're all, and that's basically the size of the site on top of all the base images is immeasurable, right? It's not even appearing in the size column.
Right. So if you look at if I understand correctly, .NET Nuke relies on this ASP.NET one, which is 4.6.2, which relies on Windows Server Core.
Yep, which is 7.3, right? And the difference there, I believe, is we add IIS.
Yep.
And we register ASP.NET, so the ASP.NET reg IIS command type stuff.
Right.
And we
full framework.
Yeah, full framework. And we add a little executable thing that you run as the entry point to your container. Because the thing that's interesting with Windows containers and IIS in general is that for those of you because I'm assuming a bunch of people listening or watching are all kind of familiar with IIS today, and it's this new crazy world that everybody's learning about. So with IIS wants to run your web application. It's a process manager, right? It's like managing all the processes that your web applications run in. But when you're using Docker also expects that as much as possible your container is like a single process, and it's going to manage the life cycle of everything that's running inside your container. There's a little bit of a disjoint there. So the ASP.NET image also sets up the entry point to run IIS, and when your app finishes, it also stops, such that from the outside running Docker, you just say Docker run, and my app starts, and when you stop it, it stops, and there's no kind of interferences with IIS trying to run your app and restart your app for you, for example, unless it's supposed to. I'm not sure I explained that particularly well, but
no, that's okay. But you can go and actually go into Docker and look at the scripts and see the Docker files that explain how these get set up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interestingly, I had Server Core, which is 3 months old,
mm-hmm.
And it didn't need to be updated. I just got ASP.NET, and they cascade.
Interestingly, if you do a Docker pull, it will update it, I believe, because periodically the Windows teams ship updates to the Windows Server Core images kind of in place, basically like community security updates kind of deals.
Yep. All right. So, I did get an interesting little error. I got like client version number is incorrect or whatever.
For the compose file?
Like Docker client tools should be 2 point something or whatever. I had to go into the compose file and update it from 2 to 2.1.
Okay, interesting.
Jeff Fritz said that was, another thing. Because I'm on some, I'm on basically on updated Docker.
Yeah, because you're on an old set of stuff, is that?
Well, the Docker tools from this version of the release candidate generated this.
And it generated the...
and it generated like that.
Yeah, which was the previous.
And then I just changed it like that to get past that error. Okay. But that's all I did, literally.
Mm-hmm. So let's look at your Docker file then.
Yeah. So the Docker file.
So for those of you, I know there's a few people in chat who are like, I don't really know anything about Docker. So the Docker compose file is typically how you would stitch kind of a couple of containers together so they all start up and they stop at once. And it's also how Visual Studio injects things like the debug environment variables to make it easier to debug and run with Visual Studio. But the actual file that generates the image that your application runs in is just called a Docker file, and it'll be in here somewhere.
So this is going from the Microsoft ASP.NET one, has the working directory, which makes total sense. It's going to use the root directory of this Windows instance, IIS.
Yeah. So that's the other thing we do in our base image is delete whatever's in a www root by default. There's something in there.
And then in this case, pull publish output.
Yeah.
So I just right-clicked on there, did that, and then I pushed Docker start project.
Yep. And what happened?
.NET Nuke doesn't know anything about this.
No, that's right.
And look.
Well, .NET Nuke is running. Who would have thought?
So here's the thing, though. You scroll down a bit. No default database connection. Standard database setup unavailable, right?
That makes sense.
So this IP address is what?
So that IP address is what you've been given. So if you go back to your command line, go back to your, this is what you were going to do. He's way ahead of me. See how much he prepares?
What you do?
Yeah. So,
type in the name of the thing.
Yeah. So the name of the image. So there's a couple of things here. This is a Dockery way of doing this, right? -F is filter. So if you just type docker inspect and look at this command, it's asking you for docker inspect the name or the ID of the container, right? So do docker inspect and then the name that you had before, docker. What is it? .NET Nuke web or whatever.
.NET Nuke website.
Sorry, my apologies. Inspect runs against a container, not an image. So there's a distinction here. So docker ps so you have, this is your images, right? These are the the classes, but the ps is the instances of the class, the actual running container. So when it's asking for a container ID, it's asking for that identifier there, container ID, not the image name. Right. Yeah, and so if you scrolled through here, you'd see all this information about your running container, including things like the IP address. Okay. So what your command you're running is doing is saying, run the inspect command, filter by just giving me the network settings, the IP address, and there's my IP address. So there's another thing you can do, which is interesting. I'm assuming we're happy with just kind of randomized, doing random learning about Dockery stuff in here.
Well, what I'd like to do is, if you see that it said, when I started it up, it said, right, hey, no database.
No database. You want to make that work?
Well, what I actually did, given that I'm learning still, I looked at this. I got SQL Server for Windows.
Nice. Yep.
Okay. And I believe if I go into here, there's the SQL Server connection string for .NET Nuke.
Yes. Yep.
You could theoretically...
You could absolutely make this work. Yeah, we should be able to anyway. So, yeah, you want to try?
Yeah, it might, no guarantees, lower your expectations now.
Yeah, so one thing I was going to say for those people who, with that IP address thing, because that command can be a little bit weird to remember, but one thing you do know how to run to find the IP address of something is ipconfig, right?
Yeah, you do know how to run ipconfig.
So if you type docker exec ff ip space config, ipconfig, sorry, it'll also run, and it'll tell you the IP configuration of your machine. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. So ff in this case.
This is the container ID.
The container ID.
Yeah.
Because I went docker ps.
Yep. So docker exec is take this command that I'm about to type after this and run it inside the container that is identified with the ID.
The docker exec.
Yep.
FF is too convenient. It's really...
Yeah, it's that. It's a full... You basically you need just enough of the identifier to make it unique. Yeah.
And I could go ipconfig-all.
Yep.
And that's piping that from that. So here's the Hyper-V, and that's the IP address.
Yep. So you can basically run any command line that you could have run on your Windows command shell by running docker exec into a container. Just
can I run command?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Go. See what it does. There you go. You didn't attach, yeah. So it doesn't by default attach your current terminal to it. So it just ran command and then returned and said, okay, right?
I see, and I'm back out again.
You're back out again. There, if you pass -it docker exec -it, like docker exec it, then before the identifier, then that attaches the terminal, and now you're inside the container.
Now I'm inside that.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's .NET Nuke.
Yeah. And so here you could, this is the same as if you were, so you could do anything in there. It's same as if you were on the, same as if this was a VM and you had kind of gone over to it and turned on the terminal, right? How's that for some Docker foo?
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
All right. So just writing that down because that's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, and then from there you could do in the case of .NET Core, you can go run the .NET command and see what's happening, or browse around and see what's happening inside this container.
Cool. So this is my compose here.
Mm-hmm.
Then I've got a debug one and a release one. The debug one includes, it copies the Visual Studio remote debugger across.
Yep.
Do I want to make a compose? Do I want to go and add .NET Nuke.SQL?
Yeah, absolutely. So you have, what's the image name that you've got over here? So your Docker images.
Did you see this right here, Docket? That's me typing .NET and Docker too much.
Yes. I also find myself sometimes typing .NET when I mean Docker and Docker when I mean .NET. So you copy that Microsoft /MS SQL Server /Windows name, your image name there. Yep.
This one here.
Yeah, copy that. Jump over. So now you want to make another service. So give it a name, as you said.
Okay.
Yep. And then image, : and then that name that you just copied. And then up in your services, up in your .NET Nuke.website, what we're going to do is say depends. We're going to add a new line there. Depends _on.
Depends _on.
Yeah, and then : and then we're going to put in the name. Then it's a dash in YAML, Yep. And we're going to put .NET Nuke.SQL Server, the name of the image file that you created. Yeah. So now you're saying,
nice IntelliSense I'm getting.
yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, this is one of the things that Visual Studio layers very nicely onto an experience, is things like IntelliSense. I think you can thank Mads for that, but I'm not sure.
Well, regardless, it's magic.
Yes, it's awesome. So what depends on is saying is, this website, it's fairly self-explanatory, right? It's like, this website depends upon the SQL Server. Now, what that means is when you do Docker Compose up to run these two containers, it's going to start the SQL Server first, then it's going to start up the website. So it takes care of making sure that the database starts first and that they can talk to each other.
Okay, cool.
So now inside, the .NET Nuke.SQL Server, inside your .NET Nuke site, .NET Nuke.SQL Server will be a name that you can get to. Like, you could ping it.
Really?
So yeah. So if you were to do Docker Compose up now, you'd be able to go do Docker exec, and you should be able to basically.
So should I do it here?
You can, yeah, that will work too. What have we found? Is it bugging our YAML syntax?
Line 12. It did expect. Oh, I forgot to put a colon here.
Yep, that'll do it.
I blame you for that.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Jeffrey, for telling me in chat that we needed a colon.
Oh, really?
Just in time, thanks, Ned.
So Jeff is helping way back over there. Another monitor.
Yeah. And Chad hates YAML for exactly the reason that we just hit. Yep.
Well, what is it that YAML means? Yet another markup language?
Yeah, something like that.
You probably didn't need it.
Okay, so see here.
Project.yaml will be soon, right, everyone?
Don't you dare.
Then now they're saying Azure team, Andre is saying on chat here that Azure team needs to make a Docker as a service. I think we did that. It's called the Azure Container Service.
Mm. Yeah, so, I mean, and it's a complicated thing, Andre. Like, sure, that's absolutely like everybody's dream, right? Let's go and let's just make a compose file and throw it at the cloud, and magic happens. There's a ton of stuff that would have to happen. Not the least of which is someone needs to own the VM, right? And Docker for a very long time have been very careful to say, Docker is not a security boundary, so don't share, don't share a single machine with many containers that are untrusted, right? Mm-hmm. So those sorts of things take time to resolve. Like, the amount of time it took us to be able to reliably do a PaaS that was that easy with Azure websites is fairly took a while, right?
Oh, look.
Yeah. So now you've got both of them. And if you go Docker PS,
I'm going to need to make a docket. I need to make a docket alias. I'm going to type docket on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. Does Docker not like being called when other things are doing things with Docker?
No. Well, I mean, sometimes if Docker is doing two commands at the same time on the same machine, you might get things like that, like slowdowns and stuff. Is that what you're feeling right now? That it's
there's a couple things going on. We're having a conversation. Mm-hmm. I'm streaming video. You're streaming video. Mm-hmm. We're running Chrome. It's searching for viruses and God knows what.
You just started up SQL Server.
I just started up SQL Server, but at the same time, I'm on a Surface Book and it's handling it rather nicely.
Reasonably well. Yeah. Docker. So what's interesting here is that the SQL Server, whilst it says it created the website and the SQL Server instance, it didn't stay up. So if let's debug this, right? Because this is probably, I suspect I know what the problem is here, but I'm just going to walk us through it.
Because it looks like it created the SQL Server one.
Yeah. So let's go Docker PS-A. Right. Now, it created it and it started it and it's doing a thing. Yeah, it exited 48 seconds ago.
Okay.
Now, I can't remember if you can do this or not. Can you type Docker logs 1E? 1E being
1E, where that is.
Yeah, Docker logs with an S at the end.
So in the glorious magical world of Microsoft, you have to click yes to indicate that you agree.
Yes,
So
yes.
there's no way to click yes in a headless thing.
Yes,
So we're
yes.
going to click yes by setting a new EULA.
Yep. So
Good
you,
for us, Microsoft.
yeah. So, and if you go to the Docker Hub page for this image,
I'm sure it's in the instructions.
exactly, and you
Right.
basically set an environment variable that says yes, I accept the EULA.
What do they say? RTFM, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Sign your soul away with some lawyer decided that we needed to do that environment.
The other thing that we'll need to do that they'll tell us in here is we probably need to set the SA password, right? Just like they say
that's
there.
a good point. Yeah.
That was what I thought it would be. So you've got accept EULA equals Y there. So the way that you set environment variables in Docker Compose, see, they're doing it in the command line, but basically what they're saying is we do it in the compose file.
So what is it? ENV?
Well, you've got an example here, right? It's in your other file, in the other file in your solution.
Are you implying I should read the manual?
No, in the solution that you've got, the Docker tools created you an end file, right? Like other files that have volume, that have environment variables. In there, maybe?
No.
Oh, I didn't.
I think I got it. I don't think I got an environment variable one.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's environment, I think, and it's environment is the key, and it has dash name equals value, I believe, and I'm going to go
so environment like that, and dash, and then name equals value.
Yeah, and I'm just checking. I'm frantically googling the syntax to see whether or not I'm correct because I don't do it very frequently. Yeah, debug equals So yes, it's name equals value. Yep, scroll down a little bit, and right there it was. Yeah, equals Y. Equals in this case, not colon, because colon is a character.
And I need my SA password.
SA underscore password. And of course, the other thing that SQL Server will enforce.
That's not good because that's a secret.
Yeah, the other thing that SQL Server will enforce is the complexity of your password, I believe, because it's super important to have a complicated password that's unencrypted in a file.
How about that one?
Sure. And you also need to put this into your connection string once you get to setting the connection string inside the XML file for your web app. So there is a feature coming in the next version of Docker, Docker 1.13, where at least when you're using Docker Swarm, which is Docker's orchestrator, you can register a secret and then have it appear inside a container, and they take care of making sure it's encrypted when it's at rest and things like that.
Okay.
We could talk about that. There's a config provider we're building for it and some other bits and pieces.
Right.
So
that way we don't
if people are interested, give me a yell. We can talk more about it or not.
Okay.
I'll promise I'll read chat for a few minutes to make sure I know.
Yeah, because Chad right now is saying, well, that's great. How do we do this in production without giving away the password?
Yeah, that's the question, right? So you end up doing things like, spinning up Azure Key Vault and then going and grabbing the secret from there and things like that, or various other things. The environment variables don't have to go in a compose file either. They can be configured separately to that.
Right.
Yeah.
So consider this development, but this is environment variables are in vogue again. So this is the way we're doing this again.
Yeah. So
in the Node right now, and it's all environment variables.
Yeah. So if in the case of the next version, in the case of like Kubernetes and the next version of Swarm and DCOS, like all these things that these orchestrators that manage many containers for you on a production cluster of machines, they all have kind of features where you can say to the orchestrator, the thing that takes charge of running the containers for you, here's a secret named connection string. And when I create a container, I want you to make sure it has this connection string available and take care of encrypting it for me when it's stashed so that other people can't steal it from me.
So here I've got the website in the SQL Server, and it's still up.
Yeah, it stayed up. Success.
Success shipping.
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right.
Okay. So now you should be able to browse to .NET Nuke again, and presumably it'll still be broken the same way.
All right, so here's the password, and there's the .NET Nuke.SQL Server.
Yeah.
Here's the connection string.
Yep. So that's wrong, right?
I'm going to comment this one out. Comment this one in. Control K, Control U. That's how I roll.
Yeah.
That XML, Control C. Oops, and there it just launched it. Control K, Control C. SQL server's not local anymore.
Nope.
It is .NET Nuke.SQL Server. You're saying.
We're going to give it a try.
Of all that.
And then, so now the user ID is what, SA? You're going to log in as SA?
No, I need a better password. I'll use SA for now.
Seems legit.
But I would have to put into the script. I have to make my own Docker file. Put something in here to go and call like PowerShell to make a user.
Yeah, basically. I think I haven't spent much time actually working that out, so I couldn't do it without starting to look around. But yeah,
then we should do this.
Don't do this. Yeah. See, it's totally fine now because you've got a to-do saying that this is dumb. So once you've done that, you're completely
this
fine.
absolves me of all guilt.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We should figure that. I'll figure. We'll figure that out later. But that's cool.
People are asking for an example, and we can totally flesh this out and we could maybe talk about it at a later date. Where here's the example.
Judging us right now, Thomas Crow just said, "I'm all for seeing a demo of not doing that."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No judgment.
It's a complicated. Like I spent I think about an hour on a call with some guys from Yammer about how they handle secrets in Docker. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's some very crazy and extended lengths you need to go to actually really be secure. Especially if you have Microsoft Red teams attacking you all the time.
When I hit start project again, what happens? Does it just shut that down, or like?
Yeah, it kills all those ones and starts new ones. Well, it depends on what files you've changed, to be honest. I think if you've not touched anything, I don't think it does much at all.
Well, I touched the compose file.
Yeah, which is why it'll rebuild. It should rebuild,
redo things. Pardon me, I touched the web config.
Oh, yeah. So in that case,
it should restart.
I don't know if it should restart it, but I don't know what the state of everything is in this kind of build.
Yeah, I may have to rebuild. Yeah. So here's another interesting thing.
So if one thing here, this is a cool note. For those of you who have been learning about Docker a lot, I don't know if this hit you, Hanselman, when you do Docker PS-A, because a lot of people don't get this initially. So if you run it on your machine here, you've probably got like a ton of stuff in there, right? We need to alias Docker. Yeah. So you've got all these old copies.
2 hours ago too.
Yeah. So if you go to your Solution Explorer and you right-click on the solution and you do clean.
Well, this is a big deal. With all due respect, I don't want to rebuild this.
Sure. Okay. Don't worry about it then.
I'm just saying there's 65 other projects in here.
Yeah. So when you do clean, it deletes all of the Docker stuff as well as the local builds.
Yeah.
Is what I was going towards, which is typically a big deal. But yeah, just do a rebuild then, or a build then, and call life good.
Yeah. This is non-trivial.
Or you can do probably a Docker Compose stop.
Well, what I need to do is right now, to be clear, I'm building .NET Nuke from source, which is not awesome. Mm-hmm. I should have just taken their binaries and done the Docker stuff itself, but I just wanted to see if this was possible.
Yeah.
So the SQL Server, though, where the file is located, like the MDF, the SQL Server database itself.
Yeah, by default it must be inside the container.
So this is for
ideal. Yeah, this is really demo stuff, right?
So this is interesting. It found that. Look.
Yeah. Okay, so go back to your console and do the Docker logs thing again with whatever the new container ID. Dock it again.
That is a problem.
It's still the same.
There you go. Look at that.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay, so there's no database, right?
Yeah, there's no database. So what I was looking for then, at least on, it looks like it might be a lot faster on Windows. On Linux, when you're inside Docker, it can take sort of 10 seconds whilst the container's started, and so Docker continues, the SQL Server itself isn't ready for connections for like 10, 15 seconds sometimes after starting up. And so I wasn't sure if you were going to hit that problem here or not.
That's a good point. So you're saying that the speed at which it started up, maybe that particular website queried, found no SQL Server, and said, I give up.
Exactly, because like it's not available ready yet because it can't accept connections. But in a few seconds from now, it's all good.
Okay, well let me close this one then.
I'm not sure that's the case.
I'll do it over here.
Yeah. Okay, so it doesn't. Yeah. Okay, and you enter the password, but it's kind of strange. So I think it may actually make the database for me. Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Just to create it. I suspect what happened here is that the XML file didn't get updated in the container.
Summon blog. Password.
I'm glad you think this is helpful, dude.
This is deeply helpful. I think it's helpful. I don't know. Forget the other 600 people that are watching. I think it's helpful.
Maybe we need to do more of this stuff where we only half know what we're doing and we just spend some time tooling around and working it out and then watch.
I usually only know half what I'm doing. Verifying database connection.
See if it works.
keeping in mind that I don't know anything about .NET Nuke as well.
Mm-hmm. It's been a long time since I've done .NET Nuke. Not since one of my very first jobs out of university.
But here it says unable to connect to database.
Okay, so that's interesting. Let's scroll down and let's see what our error is. Thanks. That's a good error.
That's super helpful.
Yeah.
Does that mean the database doesn't exist? Maybe I need to connect to the database with SQL Management Studio.
Well, that's going to be difficult.
Maybe, let me ask you this. Can they all talk to each other given our existing compose? Do I need to expose any?
Well, that's what, so in Docker V2, in Docker Compose V2, all the containers should be able to talk to each other. And by doing depends on, there's also a link command, which I believe is not necessary as part of V2 to make this work.
I'm thinking about port numbers.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And that's what I'm talking about here. It shouldn't, now, you're not going to be able to talk to it from here, from your host, because it's not exposed on your host. You could expose the port by entering a port into the compose file, and then you could browse to it with SQL Management Studio if you wanted to do that. But it's not by default because we didn't tell it to. But they should be able to talk to each other. Oh, we might need to, you might actually be correct. Actually, that sounded bad. You might be correct in that.
That I might actually be correct is what you're saying.
That's what I was going to go. And I was like, oh man, that was so not what I intended for that to sound like. So we may actually have to put a port in, but we're just not expose it publicly, just expose it internally. Sorry, I forgot about that step.
Oh, are you thinking about this here?
I'm thinking of that there. See that, not necessarily, yeah.
That one or that one?
That one. We don't need both. We don't do the ports, but only 4,000, not 4,000. Well, just do that ports. The ports one with the SQL Server ports that we need were all mapped.
What is it? 1433?
And then presumably this is probably in the instructions for the Docker file, Docker file as well, because it's the sort of thing you would have to do in order to use this thing, right?
Yeah. So see, they've got it right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
See?
Yeah. So 1433.
So
the thing here is, let's just do this exact syntax, and then I'll talk about it a little bit more once we have it once we're running. Because what this should let you do as well is access it via SQL Management Studio, which is kind of cool, and we'll play. So we should try that as well.
All right, that sounds good.
Indenting matter in YAML?
I'm sorry?
Indenting matter in YAML? Pretty sure it does. I mean, if not, 600 people inside are going to be dying anyway because it's
understood.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
See here, now you can see Docker Compose rebuilding stuff in the console output down there.
Someone wanted to know if the SA password needs to be case sensitive. I think it is case sensitive.
It is.
This is case sensitive.
Do you mean the complexity in that you have to have a capital letter in there somewhere?
I think it is complicated enough. Oh, that's a good point. Could it be more complicated?
I would have thought that you would have got an error from SQL Server, wouldn't you?
I would think it would freak out if it was the case.
But it is case sensitive.
It is SQL Server, right? SQL Server is kind of psycho about that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good thing to watch out for. Let's keep an eye out.
Yeah. I remember reading somewhere today that SQL Server didn't require a lowercase container, I think. But
all I know is that SQL Server to me is like my mom, and that it nothing I ever do is good enough for it. What? How do I get rid of? Do I have to worry about these PS-A's and are they lying around?
So they are lying around, and they're lying around because you remember earlier when I can hear myself. Do you have your speaker going?
I can't hear. I can hear you fine.
Okay. People in chat, am I going?
I will lower my speaker.
So earlier on, when you did Docker logs, and we found out that we needed the EULA.
Yeah.
You ran that on one of those PS-A's.
Yeah.
And if they didn't keep them around, you would have been able to work out why the container died.
Okay.
So they do leave them there explicitly for this situation, and then you can clean them up later.
Oh, well, shoot. Everyone's complaining about echo. Y'all should have told me that an hour ago. Hang on a second. See how I turn the blame around on everyone but myself?
Thought this was good to do that too.
All right, hang on. Apparently, it's been going the whole time.
I think it was really soft before.
Yeah. All right, hang on. How's that? Is that better? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? It
Can you hear
sounds
me?
good to me, so hopefully they...
All right, you're on my ears now.
Awesome. So who was it? Hisham? So I'm assuming when you say I think you need to add a database in SQL Server, I'm assuming that this Docker, this DN.NET Nuke like panel is smart enough to go do all that based on a connection to an empty server. That's the kind of assumption that I'm running under.
Gotcha. All right. Let's
And Donovan, the one and only Donovan Brown is in the house as well. Hello, Donovan.
Oh Lord! Now he's going to tell us what we're doing wrong.
Yeah.
This is interesting to me. The IP address keeps changing. Is that bad?
Of your containers?
Of my website.
Yeah, that'll do that all the time because it gets assigned. So eventually what'll work is the same as with Linux. You'll be able to kind of browse to local host, basically. You just can't do that for the time being in Windows containers. Eventually that'll kind of be more transparent for you. Donovan, you're the only man in chat whose name is also a URL, as in donovanbrown.com is your name.
Okay, .NET Nuke file name.
Is that because of when you're going to be talking to a like SQLite type database?
I don't know. So a couple things that I'm finding that are interesting. That it's saying no valid database connection detected. That might get to your point about starting up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what
it might take X minutes.
Yeah,
for this thing to warm up.
Yeah, and what I was hoping we would see when you did Docker logs on the running container, that it would show you like a bunch of initialization stuff still kind of happening. That doesn't appear to be the case. So maybe that isn't the case on Windows. On Linux, because so for the people playing along at home, the only SQL Server Docker containers I've run have been Linux ones. I haven't tried it on Windows yet. This will be the first time.
Yeah. Well, this whole thing is the first. So, all right. So let me hit enter again.
And so you should also, I think, be able to connect with SQL Management Studio now because we expose the ports.
To what IP address?
The IP address of the SQL container. So
which
you'll need to
I do not know.
find it out. Yeah.
Okay, so if we go back to here, you had that whole inspect thing many years ago. 8.6, that one.
Yeah, that IP address right there.
So I'll go like this, and then I'll go over here, and I'll go connect. I'll say SA, because we're bad people. And it was...
Once again, because we keep saying we're bad people, we're totally absolving ourselves of all guilt.
Well, we're not. We need to solve the problems. Fancy, super fancy pants. $123.
$123.
Sweet Lord.
Look at that. You have a database running in your container.
Well, I'm like super shocked that worked.
Yeah, so now if you were to like change your compose file again to like remove one of the 143Ts,
right, which I would never do.
It wouldn't be the case anymore because, well, what that line is saying make this port available externally, right? Exactly. So eventually you do want to remove it. You only want to have one port in there which says other containers inside this compose file can access me, but not anybody else.
Right.
That would be your end goal.
Cool. All right.
So now not only do we have an SA password that's there, not only are we using the SA password, we're also exposing our database to the world.
Oh, yeah. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Okay. Database setup, custom.
Yeah.
SQL Server, database name,
Nuke. So
security.
It's maybe there's a problem with the name. So we could try the IP address in here. We would have to change it eventually, but that might be a thing we could try as well if we're debugging.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Then we can find out, what we did wrong later if we get
verifying database connection. I've got some kind of style sheet problem here too.
Interesting.
Unable to connect. Let me try it from Edge. God help me.
And the IP address in the database name, I suppose, to see if that's a thing, because we know we can connect to that database name, that IP address. Sorry.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I could potentially use that IP address.
Might be a problem. It's quite likely. Like there are limitations currently, like things that the Windows team haven't quite fixed yet or built yet. Not even necessarily bugs, just they haven't got there yet. And I'm not sure. I don't know the state of all those things, and it's quite possible that for now you need to use IP addresses. I don't know.
Look at this button.
Yeah, that's great. Why is that there? Isn't it already open?
It's a button that you accidentally click when you're in Internet Explorer that causes you to load Edge.
Oh, nice. I see what we did there.
At
That's
all.
great.
No one feels like that's a bad idea.
Create database in SQL Server. Okay, we can do that too. What's the database name?
Is someone saying to do that for us?
So he's saying to do that because it's not going to do it for us, I guess.
Well, then that would mean we would need to do it as part of the...
Oh, I see. Because it's asking us explicitly for a .NET Nuke, for a database called .NET Nuke. And
right.
So your assumption is that it's not going to create that for us, and so we should...
I was hoping that it would make it for me.
Me too.
Because automatic things. Yeah. So that means I need to add it to the script.
Yeah. Presumably the same one that creates you your non-SA user.
Right.
Okay. There you have a database now. All right, you try your thing again.
Because Hisham said to do it.
Yeah, we'll just do whatever he says. He has like he has his own logo as he says his thing, so it must be right.
What he says. Mm-hmm. Oh, verifying database connection.
Nice. Yeah, that was the next.
Yeah, Philippe is saying use the IP address. That's the next one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we connect.
I still think like the network, the database, the what do you say? The I shouldn't have to do it this way.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like everybody, I just realized that everybody's used to seeing you on stage. Where after the hours you've spent doing this. Oh
yeah, this is the learning how this stuff works. It's all of our jobs. We've all been here. We've all been exactly here.
Yeah.
Well, that's happening. Something's happening. So I'm going to go and check tables. Because if things were happening,
you think you'd see tables in here?
I would expect things to start rolling in. I am a little surprised it's not automatically making it for me. Look at that. The given pass format is not supported.
But it is trying to do something.
Okay, so that's interesting. So what we learned there.
So it presumably now can connect to the database.
It didn't like the database. I don't know if we won yet.
Yeah, I don't think we're fully there, but we got past that problem. The next era is success in a developer's life, after all.
Yeah. So, unrelated to .NET Nuke, something interesting that we're noting here is that what we put in as the name didn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's weird.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, this is the list of things that you and I will go to the team and ask them about in the next.
But that seems like more of a Docker thing.
Yeah, I suspect we'll find that there's something that's not quite done yet with networking to allow them to talk to the host name properly.
Right. But at the same time, the IP address worked. But then you get into a what's the word? A chicken and the egg issue.
Yeah, that's right. How do you know the IP address?
Where did we go here?
So where's our connection? Then you need to start trying to assign IP addresses in the setup and stuff.
Yeah, we can't put the IP address in the web config.
See you later, Donovan. Thanks for dropping by.
So, now that's interesting. This file just changed.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Yeah, I know what that is.
They edited that file.
Yeah. So by default, when you press F5 in Visual Studio, they volume out your source code. So changes that you are doing in the setup thing right now is happening on your local machine, which might not be expected for it actually is expected when you want. So the reason you do that is because you want to be able to change some source code and press F5 and get there as fast as possible, right? So they mount the code inside the container, but it's still pointing at the stuff that's locally on your disk. And then they don't have to rebuild and restart the container every time you press F5. It makes it a lot faster.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Look at that.
All the pretty tables.
Okay, so interesting. So two interesting things though. Then, could we have gotten away without using the IP address?
You may be.
How do we make sure that this doesn't break the next time I start the container up?
Yeah. So we need to look at, and I'm not sure of the syntax for this because I've never actually done it. We'll need to look at how you basically pick an IP address and assign it and get it to stay there. Pretty sure it's possible.
But more importantly, using the name should work, as John.
Should, yeah, using the name should work.
Mentioned. That was weird that it didn't work.
Yeah. And the first thing we'll do is we'll talk to the Windows containers folks and say, hey, is it a known thing that the IP address doesn't work, that the name wasn't working?
Well, but at the same time, it would be worthwhile to look at the .NET Nuke source code and see what they ended up using. Did they go and make some change or some check using system.net.dns, whatever?
Yeah. What is the thing they are using to determine whether or not they're going to be able to connect? Are they just creating a SQL connection and then opening it and seeing if it fails?
Right, exactly.
Or are they doing something smart?
Trying to be smart.
Yeah. Could SQL Server named pipes be disabled? I'm not sure that impacts.
So this is one of the challenges with something like this, where you've got an
interactive. It's because it's a dot in the middle of the file name. Maybe. I mean, we could change that because
in the middle of what file name?
The server name has a dot in it. Is what he's saying.
Oh, that is a really smart. So Felipe Lima just said that because I'm so clever, and I named it that.
Yeah.
That has DNS ramifications.
Yeah.
So that's that's a very interesting perspective. So let's I guess we can stop now, right? Because the SQL is gonna die. So let's do that. Let's yank that. Right? How do I shut these down? Just I guess say start again. Right?
Yeah,
doesn't hurt.
You just save. I mean, you touch this file, so when you press play, the tooling should just rebuild them for you.
Can I change that too?
Yeah, change whatever you want. It's your file.
Smart. Compose file is invalid.
What did we say? Image.
Because the website is neither an image or a build context. So I have to go like this.
So that one, I think the tooling probably needs that to be special in that it probably has to match your. It probably needs to match your.
All right, so I'll just do it with the SQL Server for now because that was a smart idea.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question, though. Okay, removing orphan, that just went by.
Removing orphan?
It just said removing orphan.
Yeah.
That must mean it's tidying up some of my Docker PS stuff for me.
They do. I believe they do make an attempt to keep only the current one running on the local machine.
Right. So then the question is, if it could get to the database on its own, would it make the database and all those tables?
Yeah, because we don't know, because we're not going to go and read. We're not going to go and read the manual until we get started.
Or do I need to go and add something to my thing that uses, or what is it, SQL CMD? What's the SQL? There's a SQL command line?
Yeah, the SQL CLI. Yeah.
Yeah, so I need to use the SQL CLI and in Docker go and create.
Yeah. So yes, we'll do that, Hisham, because it's probably wrong when we get there. The thing there is that you can't do it on Docker build. Right?
But what I'm saying is that there's a whole list of stuff here.
Yeah. So and what I'm saying is because
my own Docker file.
This is actually the second time today that I have had this conversation. Interestingly, which is kind of cool.
Right. It need to be a command like this. I need to copy a bunch of stuff.
And the reason you know is because this happens on your dev machine when you build the image, right? It doesn't happen when the database server is running, right? So
it would have to happen.
Sorry. So
I see what you're saying. It happens after the fact.
So you could do it inside. You could potentially do it inside the Docker file for the SQL Server. If you go and make your own SQL Server image, like you inherit from the Microsoft MS SQL Server Windows image, then in there you could probably run commands to go and customize it. But in your web image, you can't do a command at Docker build time that is going to modify a container that's not available until runtime.
Yep. Okay, so here's my database again, fresh and clean. I did not, darn it, Hisham was smart. I didn't change this. This is still wrong. That was the way it was before because they changed it.
Change that in the UI, right?
So Elko is asking, how does the website container resolve the DNS name?
So that's supposed to be done via Docker Magic because they're all part of the same kind of Compose family, basically.
See, now look, now we're off with a won't even start up error.
From .NET Nuke?
.NET Nuke. So I would propose.
Oh, you know what?
What?
There's probably other markers in this solution that were changed when it ran through the installation. So
because of us, changing this?
Well, because if you go, no. What I'm saying is go back to the web config file. I'm saying that in here, there's probably other settings like do I need to run the admin panel, for example, all of which would have changed when it got that. So
you're saying we have a web config that is in a halfway done state? I
suspect. Like how does the .NET Nuke web, when you run this site, you get the out of box experience, right?
No, that's fine. So what I'll do is here's our web config. I should have put it under source control, but what I ended up doing was pulling it out of here.
How are you guys liking this? By the way, this is unusual for our stand-ups, right? I don't think you guys normally do this in here. This sort of like talking to the, this sort of like working out problems and playing around and talking to people in the chat about it.
Pretty real world.
Mm.
Let's do a real quick here, and let's take a look at the web config that I got with it.
And so, yes, Thomas, the IP address will have changed, but when you press F5, when you look in the output window, you can see it runs docker inspect to find the IP address, and then it pops the browser and it navigates you to the website because it knows that it's a web app and it should be able to do that. So the IP address changing from the web address, the web URL you get to should always have the correct IP address. The IP address of the SQL Server will have probably quite likely changed, but we haven't hit that point yet.
So what I'm just doing here is looking at the zip file that I got when I downloaded the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm interested in is finding that web.config.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I'm noting, though, there is no web config here.
Interesting.
There is a development and a release.config, which makes me wonder if this is being built based on transformations.
When you opened it the first time in Visual Studio or something? Like when did your web config appear?
Yeah, see, this is a config file. That looks like a web config.
It does. I mean,
why is mine suddenly 32 big? So I'm going to go and grab.
You are in a zip file right now.
True. I'm going to grab a valid point. Sorry. So here's development.config. There it is. Okay. So there was a diff tool built into devenv. There's a secret diff tool.
Nuke it. Go back to the source.
No. I don't want to do that. I want to know what's different. Forgot what it is. A way to do this. Dash diff.
I don't know this. You're on your
No,
own.
this is people like this stuff.
I open up WinDiff all the time.
Flash diff. That's what I want. Okay, so I'm going to take this file, development. I am going to stick it into the folder that I was in.
Undoing VS might work, John. It's quite possible if you left it open, but I'm not sure that we do.
Now I'm going to go over here. I'm going to type in devenv if. I know I could get WinDiff. I know I could do beyond compare, blah, 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 blah.
The only reason I use WinDiff is I can open it up and I can copy and paste a chunk of text in and do a diff just on that chunk is what I started to use it for. And so once I had it using it for that use case, I ended up with it all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Ignore the web config because DNN will install it. Will ask you for the server username and password. The web
all
config
right, so
database.
Let's just take development.config and copy it over web config. Ready?
Sure. Why not? See what happens.
Now, to the very top, connection string, we changed this last time, remember?
Mm-hmm. Didn't help us at the time, but we did.
Yeah, but we want to make sure we're consistent. We don't want to change multiple things.
Jeff, where's the 500 coming from, Jeff? We don't know. What we were playing with the reason we went down the web config path is because we suspected that because we got like halfway through initialization and then we just killed everything and we saw that the web config and other files were being touched kind of in place by the setup, that we ended up with like a very dirty file and it was time to like just try and start again,
We suspect that .NET Nuke, in the style of some of the older things out there, went and edited the web.config on its own.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it editing it when it was changing the connection string, right?
All right. There's my diff, by the way, that just showed up.
Nice. That's cool. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that's different.
Yeah. So let's get rid of that. So I just went and all I did was preemptively put in a server string that we thought might be useful.
And you're going to run it?
And I'm just going to throw that into Notepad. Yes, I know I could do a git in it, but there's a lot going on here. Okay.
Remember user ID. Yeah. I don't think it's going to matter too much for the connection stream because I suspect it'll just not work and we'll change it in the UI and then we'll click go again like we did before.
Yep, exactly. But this is going to change. It's going to change on its own. WordPress does similar things where it's an installation process that's changing itself.
Yeah, there's a whole other world of when you start using these kind of like .NET Nuke, Orchard, WordPress, all of these these sites, these type of products have a lot of this sort of stuff in them. It's been a long time since I've used any of them.
This is interesting. This says 8 minutes ago. Is it not restarting?
No, not if you change a web config file because it's volume mount, remember? So,
okay.
Right. Which, yeah, we might need, in this case, we might need to.
Well, so on the example of this, so this one here is 195 still, so I've still got the same SQL server, and it still has nothing in it. That's fine. Can I ping these things by name here, or that's only within that network?
Only within the network. Only within the Docker network.
Okay, so that's what is it looking for? 120, 112? Theoretically, the nice thing about Docker is you blow this stuff away and you bring it back and it just works. So you shouldn't have to have intermittent 500s and stuff.
The only reason that we have anything that's impacting your local machine is because of the performance improvement of mounting the local source code. So where is this error coming from, Scott? Whose error is this? Is this IIS's error?
I don't know. Oh, 500? Yes, that's their error. So let's show me how to blow that one away and bring it back.
Let's just do Docker stop.
And just start it over again.
See what the tooling does when you F5 it.
The Docker stop 36. So some people might say, well, are we just running around with VMs here? Is this why would we not just run a bunch of VMs?
Well, watch the speed, right? So Frederick,
keeping in mind, I want a
the
laptop.
sort of thing I had in mind when I was thinking about the web config file. So that's great.
Look at that. Look at that.
Yeah.
It just changed again.
Yeah. So
but we had that thing in a state of some kind.
Yeah. So Frederick is claiming that inside the install folder, there's a marker files that go away.
Ah. That makes sense. So we've blown it away, which means.
So it's gotten deleted because initialization started to happen, and we don't have it anymore.
But to his point, though, look, there might be a bunch of stuff in here.
Yeah. Well, there is lots of stuff in here, but I don't know.
That we may or may not have to clean up.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm doing it again. Now it's on 67.
Yep. And I suspect, like, my assumption here, people can feel free to tell me that they think I'm wrong, is that that's where we're at. We're kind of halfway through an initialized state, and we just need to clean .NET Nuke back to its like clean state, and then try again with this compose file set up, and we'll be in a better.
The question is then we don't know enough about .NET Nuke to know how to toss. Like, do we just delete that install folder?
Yeah, or do we go and grab the install folder, delete the install folder, and grab it out of the zip again, or do we have to like just start again?
This is interesting. Look, this one says now created, and then it says up. So it was created 11 minutes ago, just started up again. So we definitely have it in a halfway state.
Yeah, and so so basically the thing here that you can force everything to kind of rebuild, but you will have to rebuild .NET Nuke, which I know you were pretty hesitant to do, especially.
That's fine. But here's the other question, though. We are trying to do this from a debug. There it goes again. See, it's desperately changing it on the other end.
So Kevin, that's true. The only reason that this world is slightly different is because because this is a dev scenario where you're like in Visual Studio and you're running source code. The tooling it does a volume mount for your source code instead of copying it into the container.
Let me try to.
This world is not kind of truly immutable. It's kind of like a little bit of a hybrid in order to give you convenience when running and pressing F5. Because when you press F5 with this Docker tooling attached, the debugger actually attaches inside the container. So you can set a breakpoint here and browse to your container, and when the breakpoint gets hit, it'll pause in Visual Studio.
Let me phrase
a bunch of stuff that's happening.
Let me phrase it differently to help with what Kevin's saying. Kevin is pointing out, Kevin Evans on the chat there is very, very wisely pointing out that, yeah, no problem, just delete the Docker container, that's fine. The problem is there's two ways for us to use Docker in this context, okay? It has nothing to do with Windows Docker, it's Docker in general. The question is, do you publish and then copy the binaries into Docker, that is immutable to your point, or do you mount externally the source code as we're doing here and then run the Docker container? The issue here is that we've got ourselves into an unusual situation where an ASP.NET application has modified its own source code, thereby breaking the immutable rule. Now, this wouldn't have been a problem had we right-clicked and said publish, and then gone from there. Yeah. So it isn't Docker's fault. It isn't .NET's fault. It isn't ASP.NET or Visual Studio's fault. It is a side effect of how this particular website chose to edit its own source code.
And the way that we choose to do our tooling to make life easier in most cases.
Right. So we could stop doing that. We could stop doing that mount, and then it would work.
Yeah, John, you can absolutely do that. You could just clean it up and redo it. The only reason I hadn't done it is because Scott said that it takes a long time to build .NET Nuke.
Let's find out how long it takes.
So you can do Docker compose down to just basically stop everything.
I need to be in that right folder.
Need to be in the solution.
To be clear, everyone who's helping and watching is being extremely helpful, and this is all really useful information.
Yeah, totally. I'm answering you out live answering questions because this stuff can be confusing. It's also not obvious. Like, we're talking a lot at the moment, so people are hopefully following along, but it's still not always obvious how much knowledge, how much background information we have when we're jumping to conclusions.
So how come Docker compose down isn't making SQL Server go away?
Interesting. I don't know. It should have. Because of networking issues with Windows, perhaps. Okay, so do Docker ps-a. Okay, now the other thing that the tooling does. So right-click on. Yeah, that's right. Live debugging with a chat room of 106 of our .NET friends.
So let's start over again, though. We still don't know if this website is in a bad state.
That's correct. So the other thing is to right-click on the solution and do clean, which will clean up where the.
And if we look here, look at this here. See these two files here? They have changed.
Yes. We know that, and we've been told that stuff inside the install folder changes too, right? And so when you do a clean, I believe if you look at the output, you should see.
And I want to just point out, this is a big thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the version of the tooling and everything you've got, whether this works. But Docker, when you do a clean solution, the Docker tooling tries to clean up all of your older images, which will let you rebuild them. But I'm not sure if that works. A couple things that I'm noticing here. You see my CPU is at 38%.
Yeah. This doesn't add up to 38.
Yeah.
That implies some Docker stuff is off thinking. There's a VM out there doing some work, in my mind.
On Windows 10, I believe that when you're doing Windows containers, it is using a magic Hyper-V VM that you don't see in the Hyper-V manager and stuff like that.
Yeah. So that explains that.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure of any of the details of that, but I think that's the case. It does do something special with Hyper-V containers anyway.
Okay,
so yes, you can do Docker RM like that. I was hoping that the clean in the solution will do the same thing.
Should I do this Docker RM and remove everything that they suggested?
The Docker RM thing? Yeah, so you can see whether or not you need to do that by going and doing, well, now you've run, so it's too late, right?
Yeah.
But if you had done the clean and then gone and done Docker ps-a, you could have seen if there was anything left, and if there was anything left, then you could have gone, oh, okay, I'll remove that stuff and try again. But you're now, I believe it did a rebuild, right? No, it's still the same ones. The images, yeah, so it's just started up everything.
So I did not remove them at all. Yeah, we didn't toss them. It's reusing them.
Exactly.
So what are you thinking? That we're still broken here?
Yeah. So close that. Close your.
.29.
Oh, why?
Different IP address.
Oh, that was a browser you had open from before. It wasn't the one that was popped by Visual Studio.
Right. I'm finding Visual Studio tends to be slow on, or not Visual Studio, one of them, either Visual Studio or Edge doesn't let, see? It's definitely clear that we've got a local.
So that 29 was a different error.
We've angered .NET Nuke. So let's do this. Let's try removing this. Let's torch them all, like he said.
Yeah. So you want to stop all the containers and
is this a thing to do here? PSA and
well, that is a thing if you're in like a shell that you could do that dollar thing with.
Oh, how do I do that then? I can't
So
really do that.
let's do stop all the containers. So you want to stop the two containers that are running. And then
does Docker compose down do that too?
Yeah, it should. Should do it for all the services inside your compose file. Do Docker compose, I mean, you could just do Docker compose build, I believe, actually. It'll probably rebuild them. But let's continue with our like clean.
Well,
like,
the point is though, this thing is broken. And
yeah.
The web config keeps filling up with crap.
Yeah, so let's continue with our like nuking of all containers so that you're happy that you're back to the clean state, because you'll never like trust it at this point.
Well, the problem is that I don't know enough about .NET Nuke to get it into a I'm not half installed state.
Yeah, we probably need to start a new folder and do the right click, add support again. And copy
so respectfully, the amount of work required to get this thing to build is more time than we have to get this thing to work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is .NET again, .NET Nuke, no disrespect to .NET Nuke, but if you go in here, within each of these is 65 total projects.
Yeah.
So to get this to build, hang on. To get this to build, I had to do all kinds of NuGet stuff to work. What I would propose is that the only things that changed must be in this install folder.
Yeah, so you want to just replace that with a new one?
So then I would go and look at those two files there.
The two that changed? And
see if there's an install folder at all by default.
I think the claim was that some files get deleted from there. So you would also need to diff this.
We will know in a moment. Yeah, good point.
Which isn't unusual. Like I think I recall from I hear
what you're saying.
From WordPress and such that they have like files that you're supposed to delete once your initialization is done, and .NET maybe does that automatically for you, for example.
There is no .NET Nuke install config or install resources. Let's get rid of this file. Let's get rid of the two new files. That'll be our last chance.
Yeah, I just realized the other thing that might be hard for some of the people following along is that you and I tend to jump and solve. We know that there's several problems and we jump around and solve a few of them at the same time because we've done this for a while.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. Yeah. .NET Nuke is awesome, but .NET Nuke, the point here isn't about .NET Nuke, okay? The point here is somewhat older or legacy web forms app that we want to move into Docker, right? So the problems that Glenn and I are bouncing up against right now are not Docker, nor are they .NET. They're just the way that this particular app decided to run itself.
Or kind of the intersection of all the things, right?
Yeah,
everything.
It's still interesting though. But we've only been doing this for less than a minute. This is the other thing I find really interesting, at least in today's world. People give up really easily. Yeah, like I know that we're all here with 100 people watching. We've only been doing this for an hour.
I mean, and we actually in that hour we managed to take source code from the internet, basically start up two machines that are capable with the database server and a web server, and have them talk to each other and have an initialization kickoff to go and get .NET Nuke running. And then in the middle of that, we decided to stop it, like kill it.
Yeah, I would propose it's a little early to give up.
And in the middle of that, we decided to kill the initialization process and then go and change some stuff around. And, you know, that's not something that most things handle very particularly well.
So here's a couple of thoughts. This thing just 500'd, custom errors, remote only.
Yeah, so change that. Like that was one of the things they told us, right? Someone in chat said go do that.
Someone in chat said that already. So I just changed that.
Because, you know, they used to have to debug all of this stuff. Now,
I would like to blow these away, though. I feel like they're old. They may have been goofed up from before. Can we?
Yeah, that's what I was saying before.
So how can I kill this?
So do you want us to stop both of those, and then you can do Docker RM. The problem here is it is going to to do the rebuild. It will have to do the recompile, right?
Well, so let's find out. Let's find out.
Off, not on. Yeah. Is that? Oh, did he type on in there?
Did I type on? I don't remember typing on. Stop RM and PS.
Yeah, he did type on.
My bad.
So Richard, there is a, I think Docker, is it interesting to ask about a Docker Swarm video? We could totally do one of those, assuming that people who are doing assuming that you guys like this and you want more stuff where we just kind of go through.
I've got Docker, I do have Docker Swarm videos up on Azure Friday where I do node, like 10 node things all at once. You can find those. But this is an interesting one because it is the intersection of classic ASP.NET and Windows.
So there is something we can talk about. If you guys want to hear about this, you can tell me now because I'll be here to see. There's some up and coming features in Swarm, in the next Swarm engine, like in their nightly builds, where they manage secrets. And there is some .NET stuff we can do, like how do you flow a certificate from the Docker Swarm secret manager into Kestrel, and how do you pass a connection string and keep the connection string in their secret store and then have it loaded into your app and things like that we could probably talk about if you guys want to see that.
Okay, well, I've definitely angered the beast.
Have you? Okay, so where are we at now? Sorry, I was busy just like reading what everyone was saying.
No, it's okay. So somehow I've got this. Well, that's a good question. Is it SQL Server at this point? I don't know. I can kill them both, right?
Yeah, so what I was suggesting is if we can just Docker stop both of these, Docker PS-A, and then do Docker RM on all of the ones that are left that we don't care about, and then go and press F5 again, and it'll take care of going and rebuilding and rerunning everything.
But I think the point is, though, that we have bad source.
Yeah, however, that won't fix the bad source, exactly. And we don't really know, like without doing a comparison, you could do a diff of the folder that you got it from and the folder you have now, and then you can see what's different. Outside of that, you're not really going to be able to answer that question.
That's kind of disappointing, though.
Yeah. And you've got custom error set to on, which people are telling you, rather than off.
Yeah, that's what I mean by on. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, kind friends.
Which presumably would have given you some more information about what.
Yes, it presumably would have. Right, and you know what the error would have given me would have been something about connection strings or whatever. Yes, thank you, Thomas. Sorry about that.
Quite possibly. Yeah.
Very wise. I was like, when you guys were saying on and off, I thought you were talking about the command line. That was dumb. It's 5 o'clock over here. It's time to eat.
Yes. How old is?
It's frustrating when you get to these kind of situations because you get to 80% quickly.
Yes, absolutely.
Chad Levy says, does custom errors work for IIS errors?
No, like not necessarily. I don't remember anymore.
It's funny. It's been so long. Azure hides a lot of this stuff from you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you just flip it.
I've been the cross-platform guy since.
What's funny is that I used to know this stuff like backwards and forwards. You know what I mean? Like I knew everything about web config. Yeah. But then these things become a drop-down box, and then you.
I remember did conversations about like the IIS metabase and stuff.
Okay, so let's go. While this is going, let me grab the IP address of the.
So I think somebody said at least they wanted to talk about Docker Swarm 113 and their secret stuff.
We can do that one day.
I mean, we can do it if people ask.
There's the IP address of.
People seem to be happy to watch us have things break, though.
Oh, we've only been doing this a minute. We'll figure it out. Absolutely. 129.
You guys, if you guys like watching this, you guys would love to watch any of us the night before a presentation or the week of a conference.
Okay, so here, this confirms that we're in a bad state. We've blown away everything. That means my app is wrong.
Yeah.
And custom errors off did not solve that problem.
Yeah, something like that. Elko could possibly work. Basically, just restoring enough stuff to kind of try and preserve the work that Scott had to do to get it to compile by replacing everything else. Something like that could totally work.
Yeah. What I need to do.
Things to do.
Custom could be a compilation errors. I don't think we changed any web. Custom errors mode off. Compilation. Debug is already true.
Yeah, I guess
Error mode detailed.
yeah, Jeff, I guess we could do more of this sort of stuff on something like Twitch, where it's just an hour or a few hours of several of us, well, one or several of us sitting around doing something like this and talking to the people in the channel a lot. We could absolutely do something like that if there was demand for it. I don't know if there's that many people on Twitch watching their programming section, although they do have one now.
They do. Stacey Hafner and I are working on taking. She's taken over the Visual Studio one. She's got Visual Studio on Twitch.
Yeah, cool.
We'll talk about. We'll work with her and get something going. I'm just adding error mode detailed. Was it 60?
57. So
no, it's 60. 137. Well, now I just ruined everything.
What's that called, David?
I just blew away the whole thing.
At this point, it doesn't seem to matter if you're searching on Stack Overflow or not, because even if you're just searching in Google, it's probably going to give you a Stack Overflow answer for any problem that's been hit before. At least that's the way it seems. And then you'll find that, John Skeet already knows the answer to everything that you've ever tried to ask before you've tried to ask it.
How do you get like this idea that I want to know what's happening,
Yeah.
How do I get the top inside the Docker stick thing?
Oh, you can. Wow.
See, haha.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. To the database failed. Yeah, right. And so that's because it's not going to the setup screen anymore. It's just trying to connect to the database that it already prepared earlier, right?
Okay, go in. So then right here, it's trying to talk to the database that doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's right. Because you're not getting the out-of-box experience anymore, the wizard anymore. It's directing you just straight up to doing a thing. I assume that's what's happening here.
Exactly. So this gets to our point that my local DNN is now restart install.
Yeah, and we have no SA in the connection string. User missing. Yeah. Well, that's right. We were kind of assuming.
If the install script never ran against here you go. Look, if the install script never ran against your database, check the web config. There's an install date that was added when you first installed DNN. Remove it, and the script will configure itself.
That means that the assumption about the web config was correct, which also makes me kind of happy if that guy is correct, of course.
Yeah. I knew it was something like that, you guys and gals. Okay.
Live.egU.tv, is that what? Interesting. Livecoding.tv. Yeah.
There's a lot. I wrote a whole blog post about Twitch for programmers.
Did you?
There it is. Installation date.
Cool.
I want to point out with a culture specific installation, which is so bad.
Do we remove the key or the value of the key? It's non-specific, right?
Well, I just removed everything, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, so they're the same site? Okay, cool. I'll check them out. I haven't seen them before.
So that's failing right there because I just edited a web config.
Guess that was from 2006. I guess it still applies. Yeah, man.
Good fun.
No one wants to see you. Yeah,
the 12 people who are still with us today.
Yeah.
This is working pretty well though. This has been. I'm on a Surface Book. I want to point out. And we're streaming, and we're Dockering and VMing, and we're running SQL Server, blah 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 blah, and Visual Studio, multiple versions and browsers. So hopefully this is working for somewhat well, people. Yeah, I've talked about live code. I tweeted about this live coding situation once that no one wanted to see me searching Stack Overflow.
Yeah. I mean, what I thought about was something like, streaming like more learning, where it was like, hey, we're going to sit here and we're going to build, zombie Twitter in .NET build it, a few hours at a time over the next however long it takes us to build it, and you guys are going to be in chat and ask questions and tell me the names of all the classes and stuff, right? That was kind of what I was thinking of. And so it's more like, hey, I want to learn some stuff. I'm just going to watch the recordings of that thing. And if I have questions, I'm going to go to the live or try and get to the live one and ask them in person or something. It's kind of what I had in mind.
I tweeted about this once.
Some people in chat are telling me it was you crying alone in your room.
Silence.
Look at that.
Silence.
Silence.
All right, so we're back.
We're back. We're back to where we were before.
So there's SQL Server. There's our database. 129. New database. .NET Nuke.
I'm the only other Australian here, so it was as close as we could get for you. I'm sorry, Richard. Although my voices aren't the same.
You're Australian?
No.
This time I thought you were Irish.
Austrian, in fact.
You're Austrian.
Very close to Australian.
That's not a knife. Okay.
It's not as obvious now. For the first month or so when I was here, people kept offering me Fosters for some reason.
Is it?
Eureka, back to square one. Exactly, Thomas. Exactly.
Exactly. This is the other thing, though. When you're teaching young people to code, my friends, can we all agree that it's 90% patience and telling them not to give up?
Yeah.
As they cry?
Yeah. I'm
feeling like, with no disrespect to
that CSS thing is kind of painful.
Yeah, I'm feeling that no disrespect to the to this product, that Edge is not where it's at.
Well, you can see the progress bar there, right? Yeah, there we go. So now you presumably have schema again, right? Now we used the server name there, didn't we? We used the image name, the service name.
You're right. I did use the image name, which may or may not have been the smart thing to do.
No, it appears to be working, which means that it was the dot.
Database coming in.
So if you remember, 3 years ago, when we started on the journey of the broken.NET Nuke files, we were testing whether or not the dot in the service name is what broke connecting to the database. Right?
Very wise comment there from Alec Trapani. Bumpy roads give good cars.
Apparently.
Insufficient system memory.
We removed the dot. That's right, Philippe.
Oh, we did.
Yeah.
You're right, Philippe.
And that's the thing that we're testing. Yeah, that's the thing we were trying to just do a quick test of when everything fell apart.
The whole thing fell apart when we did that. So we should have used it without the dot.
Yeah. So one thing
now it says no memory.
So I don't know on Windows if this is a thing. On Linux, you have to tell Docker to allow more memory to containers for SQL Server to run properly. That you very quickly hit limits with the default 2 GB limit. But I don't think that's a thing on Windows containers because I don't think it's configurable.
Well, I have tons of memory.
If you right-click on the Docker, well, but you remember you're behind layers of virtualization here. Sorry, remember you're behind the layers of virtualization here. So if you right-click on the Docker whale in the taskbar down there,
okay,
and you go settings. See, when you're running on Linux, in here there's a whole section about how much memory is allowed to be allocated to the VM.
Well, but you'll notice that there's a thing here that says,
but it's not there.
Memory limit not respected.
Yeah. Well, that's presumably if you explicitly tell a container to not use as much memory. So that's kind of indicating to me that the Windows containers probably are always allowed to have as much memory as they want, which is kind of interesting that you've got an out of memory exception. Clearly
given that I have still lots of memory left.
Yeah. So what are we saying? There is insufficient system memory in the default memory pool?
Oh.
So it feels like Docker or something somewhere is, because memory limitations are absolutely a thing.
Sure.
And there's also, and I'm wondering, it feels like that's what's happening here is kind of the SQL image has some amount of memory, a default like limit of some, like say a couple of gig. And once you're running IIS in there and everything, it's breaking. I'm assuming it's the database here.
Here it's saying I've got a gig-ish, but I have lots more than that. I mean, I've got another three that I got another 3 I could give it.
Yeah. So I don't know whether this is Docker constraining you or your machine. On Linux, it could be those. So it could be, so Richard is asking, has SQL stolen all the RAM on your host VM? And if this was Linux, I would absolutely say yes, that's exactly the thing that happens. And then inside the Docker for Windows when you right-click on it, you can change how much memory can be allocated to the VM. However, this is a Windows container running on a Windows machine.
There's no reason that it should not have a problem and have.
Yeah.
I would expect this to be a lot larger.
Yes, and I don't know. Is it a 32-bit instance? Quite possibly, Thomas.
Even if it was, it's still not using 2 gigs.
Yeah. But on Windows containers on a Windows machine, I don't know where those limits come into play, if they even exist. It's quite possible that they don't, or that they do exist and they're set to some number and you need to change them, or I'm not sure.
Well, so another perspective would be to shut down
just to see if it's just memory on your machine in general and just kill a few
things. So I'm going to shut down Visual Studio, okay? And that gives up another 300 plus megs. I'm watching these two working pretty hard.
Yeah.
I'm presuming the bigger one is SQL.
Mm.
Now a query starts and a CPU starts up. It's got the headroom, clearly.
Yeah.
And fails anyway.
So, like, given the number, like 915, you're thinking something like something has a gigabyte limit or somewhere?
That's weak. I've got a ton of RAM.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's no VM in Hyper-V Manager for this that this container is running on.
So then the question is, Windows containers memory limits.
Felipe, that's absolutely true for Linux containers, but this is a Windows container.
Right. There is no limit that we know of here. Memory limit not respected. Here we go. Windows 20 Tech Preview container limitations. Pool resource management, not yet available for Windows Elastic containers. No, that's not it. See, here it says to limit memory doesn't work. That's not Ubuntu. Who owns this? Gossman?
I mean, if you want to go particularly high and then let it come down to whoever actually owns it, sure.
He's out. Snover? He's out.
But what's happening here, folks, is I'm like helping Scott Hanselman, and he's like, "Who owns this thing?" And then he's going straight to, like, 7 levels of management above me, saying that guy, right? And I'm like, probably, but there's like some guy a few levels lower than that guy. I just don't know who he is.
Right, and if it's Gossman, it's a guy underneath him.
Yeah. So probably.
What's that lady's name? Yeah. Well, the other thing I would do is go and find who wrote the blog post.
Yeah. So.
Or who's on the? What about Michael Fries? Is he around?
He's always on Slack. I've never not seen him on Slack. Is it Patrick Lang and Taylor Brown and co that do this, or are they container service?
This guy?
Yeah. Tell him he's being recorded with 100 of his clear and nearest friends. So yeah, that's quite possible too, David and Nick, that it's a SQL Server limitation, the default somewhere. I just started to try and search for this image again in Docker Hub to see if they mention it somewhere. But yeah, it's quite possible that it's that too. I don't know. Let's find the server Windows.
Defaults to something like 2 gigs.
2 gigs? Yeah, okay.
So he was right.
So yeah, but so once you're running like SQL Server
now,
inside
Nick says it's worth noting SQL Express has a memory limit of 1 gig, but it's not because it's SQL 20 whatever.
Yeah. So this here, when you're running Linux containers, SQL, they explicitly tell you to go and change the VM to be more than 2 gig, to up it to like 4 gig, because you hit this exact problem on Linux containers.
So here it says for Windows containers on Win 10, because it's in a VM, you can bump it up.
Right. So this is what we said before that I wasn't 100% sure about, but now is being confirmed by Patrick, is that the Windows, like on Windows, there's still like a Windows VM. It's running like Windows Server.
But this is Moby Linux.
See it. Yeah, that's it when you're running on Linux container, but you're not running inside there right now. You're running on Windows. Yeah.
So why is that even running? That's taking up memory I don't even want to waste.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Look, see, I've got even more memory now.
Yeah. Well, you can try again now, but I don't think that's your problem, my system.
He's got an open doc bug, implying that there's a thing, but it's not written up correctly. Document how memory settings works.
Philippe, that's true, but only on Linux containers. When you're on Windows containers, if you right-click, there is no option to change the amount of memory. Not on the right-click of the white Moby. Sure, Thomas, we'll go to Rasinovich and say there's some problem.
Well, keep in mind, this is early days.
Absolutely.
No one ever said this was released. Document. Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, actually, here's the thing. Before you hit in there too much, Scott, if you go hit your site again now, we'll go back and refresh it. Like show that it's still running. I guess.
Oh, the site.
PS, maybe do something to show that it's still running. Yeah.
Oh, this site's up. It's going to keep running that over and over again.
Right. So what I'm saying is, there's a few people that are still kind of a little bit confused. So now go back into Hyper-V Manager.
I'm just simply running up against it. There's nothing in here to see.
Exactly. See? That's right. That's the point I was going. See, so when you change the settings inside when you right click on the little whale on the bottom right hand corner that people are talking about, that you can change memory settings, and what they do is change the maximum amount of memory that VM, that Moby Linux VM has. However, when you're on Windows containers, it's not using that VM. It's using a special magic VM that you don't see, and that VM you can't change the settings for.
He's saying Docker run -m 4 gigs.
Interesting.
Docker for Windows puts a slider in the settings for it. It's a per. Yeah, see, there is nothing like that.
Docker for Windows when using Linux has a slider, but not for Windows. Yeah, I think that's what he meant, was you get a slider for it on Linux, and on Windows it's per container, so it's different. Yeah.
There it is. The slider works for Linux because they're creating a VM. Yes.
Yeah. So
but there isn't. They have not. Docker for Windows has not yet exposed that.
Yeah. So ask him then, can you do -m in a
Windows
Docker
has a per container limit.
So you want to ask him, can I do -m in a Docker Compose file, so that you can just put the 4 gig limit into your Compose file for the thing, so that it runs it for you, because you're not manually doing Docker run, you're doing it via Compose. Somewhere Damien's like, this is not what I signed up for Standup.
Oh no, it's horrible. We've ruined full Standup for everyone. We've only got and only 4 people have remained. It's just a nightmare. Yeah. So the product, okay, so he's running out of RAM. We've got 2 gigs total. We're using 2 gigs per. That one's bumping up. I could give it both. So while he's thinking about that, this one says what works, what doesn't. Okay, here we go. The current heuristic to calculate the size of the utility VM is rounded up. Turns out to be a gig, which is what I'm seeing.
Yes, you are. That's confident that number matches exactly what we're hitting.
And this is Docker.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think what we want to do is in the compose file, we want to put a mem limit.
So let's go back over there. We'll call this in 5-10 minutes here. We're taking up everyone's time.
Yeah. So what I'm looking
Now,
for
now
is
someone was making a comment there about that my contact list. All I did there was speed up what you would have already done if you were doing this. You have that contact list. It's in GitHub now, but it is a nice. I sped it up because that particular individual happened to be green and is also very kind.
yes.
Any number of things, out of office, not having that list, not I could have Googled and emailed them. It's just that I had the chat.
Yeah.
But also doing this for 20 years will get you phone numbers of people as well. Is the Voodoo Docker VM a dynamic guest memory allocation? Right. And it's stuck at a gig.
Yeah.
Should be mem limit 44,000 on the service.
That's what I was just thinking. I was just searching to see whether there was a G that you could put.
Where is that service?
No. He's talking about, so what you do here is in your Docker Compose file, you add another entry like environment called mem limit, and you go : 4000M, and that's saying for this service.
Each individual service.
Yeah, because what he said earlier was for Windows, so for Linux, there is no like per service limit, but the VM has a limit. And on Windows, they have per service limits.
So that means I could give them each 15, like what's.
You can give them whatever you want. I mean, the web app container doesn't need the memory. It's not dying, right?
So I could go and do, what is it, 1536?
Yeah. So for those of you for playing along, this mem limit command is the normal command you can use anywhere with Docker on Linux or Windows to limit the amount of memory that a container is allowed to use. It just so happens to also be able to set the upper limit when using Windows containers by the look of it.
All right, let's try it.
Yeah.
A nice person. Mapping values not allowed here.
What is not allowed? It was this is a YAML problem, right? Did we do something bad in YAML?
It got angry. Put that mem limit in there. About column 10.
Column 10 on that row? Is it only that row and not the other row?
I'm sorry, pardon me. Column 16.
Line 16.
Doesn't like the ports.
Ports is indented. Did you accidentally outdent it too many? Both of them? Is that right? Because this is YAML's white space sensitive, right? Yeah, so you accidentally broke the line up is the problem. Yeah. Yeah. So they all need to line up and be
white space. So nice.
Somewhere in chat right now, there's a fan of significant white space. And they'll make themselves known.
Patrick is very kind.
He is indeed. Right. He has some great talks for those of you who want to know a bunch about Windows containers. I think at Ignite, he done a few that were really good. Where he talks about Windows containers. I think it was Patrick. It was him and his team. Let's see if he was there. He came and watched my talk with Steve Lesker about build containers in VSTS to build an application inside a container.
Yep, here you go.
Yeah. So yeah, he does
right here.
Yeah. So if you want like deep divey type talks just on Windows containers and stuff, him and his team they're right there. Him and Taylor.
This is you guys were talking about how I, went off and looked at stuff.
Yeah.
See this one here? Does not work at Microsoft. This is the person who's tired of being chatted because he's not Patrick.
He's the other Patrick Lang, yeah.
Sucks to be famous. Sucks to be famous. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Someone said that too. Bummer hit this today. No, that's me.
That's like all the people in chat going.
Oh, look, and people went in chat. Thumbs up me. So nice.
Yeah.
So nice.
Is there a video somewhere on Azure Container Service? Yeah, I'm sure there's several. For Ross Gardler is the person you want to search for videos.
Ross Gardler's lovely. Yes. Ross Gardler. Okay, so let's take a look what's going on here. Look at our memory differences. Look, it's gone over a gig for the first time.
Yeah.
So that confirms that works.
It's not so much that they handle memory. I mean, I think that'll all become that'll become less up of Chad. So Chad's question is, do I now need to be really worried about whether I'm Linux or Windows because memory limits memory?
No, it's just different. It's just a different. Yeah. It's just someone drew a different dotted line around it. That's all.
And I think it'll become less of a problem as time goes on. But also, it's, to be honest, it's unusual for you to be running you have to be running in something inside a container that needs more than a gigabyte of RAM before this even matters.
Right, and remember that we're talking about a world of microservices and containers. If your microservice uses a gig of something, then it's a macro service. And I'm doing legacy stuff here.
Yeah. So like if you're building a whole new application where everything is small, then you probably never hit this problem.
There you go. There's your connection database failed right there, which we expected. Mm-hmm. And now we know how to fix it. And by the way, I want to point out that I'm in debug mode now.
Yeah.
So now we'll go back over here, installation date. Mm-hmm. Delete that. I forgot to change this back to start. I think we're very close here.
SQL Server.
One thing one thing I want to point out there that's becoming very inconvenient is this IP address change. Which is Hisham's point. Let's go back. We shouldn't use the IP address.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a production, and it's also not an issue in production. I would almost, I would assert that this memory limitation is because of the way we're doing it on a dev machine because it's in a VM. If this was a Windows server, there is no VM.
Yeah.
If you're on Windows Server,
that's a very valid point. We are running Windows, and we should also point out we're running Windows Server on top of a laptop on top of Windows 10.
Yeah.
As opposed to doing on Windows Server in a container, which would be an entirely different universe.
No, it doesn't, Felipe. Docker on Windows containers does not use the hybrid Linux kernel. It has all Windows. There is no Linux.
Windows all the way down.
So the memory. Yeah, Chad, that's right. So the memory thing, it isn't actually a thing when you get to production. It's more of a thing when you're running in these virtualized environments and you have limitations. So I would expect all these limitations to go away when you get to a real environment, unless you explicitly put a cap on them, or they are already a default that the Docker has already specified. In which case they're going to be common across Linux and Windows. In which case you don't have the problem that you're worried about.
Now I accidentally started 2 of them.
So what if you use EF core in memory DB? So that is basically just a dictionary, right? The in-memory database that EF has. So it'll use exactly how much memory you put stuff into it. So if you put a gigabyte worth of stuff in there, it will use up a gigabyte. So you'll have like 700 or 800 megabytes worth of headroom before you hit the limit, depending on how big your application is, right?
So this one says something more is happening.
Mm-hmm. You've gone over 900 megabytes, which is nice. Yeah. And then
it's working harder.
Mm-hmm.
The fan is turned on. For
the other thing with, as everybody knows, SQL Server also just takes up as much memory as it can get and then never lets it go, right? Deliberately.
Yeah. Where'd my mouse go? There we go.
Which is exactly what it was designed to do for good reasons, typically.
Mm-hmm.
Then you could get rid of the MS SQL Docker image. Sure, if you chose, if you never need anything other than an in-memory database, sure. You could get rid of the MS SQL Docker image in that case. More realistically, what you'd probably do here is for the database requirements is connect to like a SQL Azure instead of running the actual database in a container, and then just not worry about that problem. Because the other problem that we have not talked about at all is that the data for this database is all just inside the container, which means which means it goes away. It's ephemeral, basically. It's not stored anywhere. It's not backed up. It's nothing. And you would need to handle that problem if you were to actually do this in production. And there are ways that you can do it, but it basically means to get the data out of the container and onto a drive on the local disk or onto a network share or somewhere outside of the container.
Chad was asking about what that token maker was. That's Authy. That's my 2-factor auth stuff. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. SG, it's when you're running a Linux container on Windows, you run on a Linux VM, and when you're running a Windows container on Windows, it's Windows. The only caveat there is that there is a Windows VM because it's kind of pretending to be Windows Server for you, basically, I believe.
Are you still there? Can you hear me still, Glenn?
I can indeed. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're off answering. No, you're answering questions. I wasn't sure if you were still with me or not.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like something's thinking, and I've got 2 up. It's chewing. I'm waiting to see that installation screen.
So, Frederick, if you stop the container and then start the same one again, then the data will still be there. If you stop the container and then start another one from the image, like do Docker run again as opposed to Docker start, then it will not be there. So
there
yes, if you stop and start the same container, the same instance of an image, then it'll be fine.
Are you there?
Until you can't do that. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, we're back.
Nice, we're back.
And
is it the same page as before, or is it the same error?
I'm not sure. It looks like the same page.
Do we just refresh and keep going? Is that what you were doing before?
I guess so. I can't tell if that was a new error or an old error.
Or if it was just like sitting there from before.
Yeah, I don't know. It's IE, who knows? What I'm missing is Task Manager with Docker containers inside.
No problems, Frederick. I'm sure I'm making gross oversimplifications about Windows on a Windows machine, but there is some virtualization tech in there.
All right. So look at this. So this is the same error.
Mm-hmm.
Let us
basically
raise the memory on the web. Is it who's running out of memory?
I would have thought it was a SQL Server.
All right. Let's raise that one to 3,000.
Sure. I mean, otherwise, I'm assuming that because the exception is coming from SQL, like somewhere in SQL client, right?
Yeah, let's watch my memory go to hell. I watch my memory right now.
Mm-hmm.
It may fail to make it even. I feel like I should shut stuff down.
Run Docker stats. Yeah, you can. That's a command that you might. I don't know if you know about Docker stats.
Look.
Yeah, 2.6 gig. Nice. Nice.
So there's SQL Server. So we know which one SQL Server is, and we know which process it is.
Yeah.
This is excessive, to be clear. And if we look at
the last instructions I saw with an app using the Linux SQL Server container, they said to increase it up to 3 or 4 gig. I think 4 gig is what they said to increase it to.
Frederick is saying, could I do Docker exec task manager? No, I could not.
You can. So if you go to your console, go back to your command line to talk about Felipe, do Docker stats. No, do Docker stats. Boom, boom, boom. So look at that. Look at that. Yeah.
That's what I was missing.
Yeah.
He was asking if I could run task manager. We could go and do an exec and run task list.
You absolutely could do that, yeah. You can also, I don't know if Docker top a command? I can't remember. Is that the?
Hang on 1 second. An 8-year-old is walking here. I need you out of here. I'm doing a thing. Close the door. Have an apple. Sorry. I'm working. I don't care. Is there a Docker stats with more detail?
I don't remember. I haven't really used Docker stats a great deal.
Okay. So it looks like it's calmed down. So now Docker PS SQL is 0f. Docker inspect 0f. That SQL Server is on 5101.
Mm-hmm.
There's our error again. Go to the web config. Toss the installation date. Hit refresh.
So imagine it like I'm running a virtual machine on this machine, and the SQL Server and the website are running inside that virtual machine, and then you'll probably have an understanding of why you can't just open up Task Manager. Frederick.
Right, and Frederick said, why not the GUI? Because we're using Windows as a headless thing, right?
Yeah. I
could run task list, though. Help me do that. Docker PS. Mm-hmm. So SQL Server is on 05, so I could go Docker.
For Docker exec, you need the container ID, which is the far left GUID thing, not the far SHA, not the IP, right?
Like this.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah. So that comes
now
from.
I just ran Docker exec with task list, mm-hmm. and you can see SQL Server inside there.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Docker has a command called top in the CLI, Docker top container ID.
That's right.
Yeah, so Docker top OF. Right? And it gives you the same thing, right?
Give me the top 5 or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't know what options they have. What do they have?
What good are you then?
Yeah, you'd have to use the CLI help to see. I've only ever ran top, and that's extremely helpful, isn't it? PS options.
That's super helpful.
Yeah.
Garbage. I'll go figure it out later.
So top. It looks like given the top is just an absolutely syntax aliasing directly to task list, right?
Yeah.
So you could probably pass anything to options that you can pass to task list, and everything will be fine.
Right.
I suspect what Docker is saying in square bracket PS options is that you can pass anything that you could pass to PS, and it'll go through.
Right.
Because it's Linux based help. Right?
Now this thing is chewing a long time, which makes me wonder if it's fixing the database up. Docker PS. SQL Server's on OF.
Mm-hmm.
So expect.
Yes, it seems like everybody using .NET and Docker together are typing Docker at some point.
Docket. So I'm not the only one typing Docket.
Yes. People in chat are happy they're not the only one.
Excellent. I'm going to go ahead and.
Yeah, Felipe, it's. I assume what I'm thinking is at the end of the covers they're just calling task list, and you could probably pass anything that you could pass a task list. But it might be a lot smarter than that. In which case, it's trying to. Maybe they do a bunch of work to map all of the things you would expect to do on Linux. We could play with it, but it's a little bit orthogonal to what Scott's trying to do. So
it's funny when people do that, the Docket thing. So here's what I would do. I would go like this.
Now Chad is saying that it's your fault that he's doing it because like he's only started since he started watching you type Docket all the time.
No, it's awful. Dropbox. Here's a trick that I do, kids. I have a folder called utils in my path on my Dropbox.
Does it have conemu or commander or something in it?
What's the thing in a that says pass on everything? Batch file all arguments. Star. Ah!
Yeah, it's not uncommon, Chad. As Frederick is saying, it's very common with for people to put dot files in, say, GitHub, for example. Dot files being an analogy from the Linux world, where you create a GitHub repo and it has all of these sorts of utils and aliases that you have. And then whenever you get a new machine, you just clone that Git repo and set it up in the right spot, and then all of your configuration is back again.
You like that? Docket images.
Nice.
Boom.
Nice.
Nice. Nice.
Okay.
All right. Get out of here. Let's stop screwing around, people.
Yes. Chad's a bad influence on us.
All right.
Tangents.
So product is being installed. Is this a real error, or is this now one that is paused from earlier?
I don't know.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I got no idea.
I'm wondering. Pardon me. If this isn't, well, now it's also wondering, is this SQL Server or window or the website?
Yeah. So you
this
know
should
that
not be complicated.
No, it shouldn't be. So you all guys also know that at some point in the next week or so, Scott's going to go to a presentation and he's going to type Docket on stage and it's just going to work.
It's just going to freaking work.
Suddenly, all these people in the audience are going to believe that Docket is a thing and they don't understand why it's not working on that machine.
I have solved the Docket problem for all of you.
Yes.
No one, do not judge the Docket. In the resource pool. This one said in the resource pool.
Yeah, that was always the same error. not getting up to 3 gig, right? So we think while SQL
Not
is
even close.
so while SQL is taking more and more memory, it hasn't hit the limit that we've set on it yet.
But it's
So that's
saying
probably not
resource
it.
pool, and I don't know if that's the SQL resource pool or the IIS resource pool. Yeah, see, this says SQL Server. I was just making sure that it wasn't IIS's resource pool. And this is not complicated. Like this is a little tiny bit of RAM.
Yeah.
Here you go. Look.
Yeah. So this is what some people in chat were saying earlier.
Yeah, it might be. It might be the enterprise thing. Okay, so then SQL
So basically,
Server.
and this is the thing, right? You peel back the layers because there were several layers of memory limits.
Maybe I'm using Express or something.
I don't think it's Express. There is an Express image. I don't think that's what this is.
Yeah, but what am I using? So let's like you said, let's peel this back. I'm using this one.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably Express.
Can you use SQL Server Monitor? As long as we probably can actually now because we opened up the port publicly so that people can access it. So yeah, we probably could do that.
See, they're not telling me.
They're not mentioning this problem, right, about how to change memory or anything.
Look here. PowerShell, download, vNext. But I thought the next version of SQL Server, hang on though, the next version of SQL Server is special, right? It's everything. It's SQL Server for everyone. Remember when we made that announcement? We removed all the limitations.
Use add version in SQL Server Management Studio to get the version. Yeah, you can do that because you can connect to it.
Here it says SQL Server will start as much memory as possible. Can I look at, actually, I've connected to it successfully.
Yes, you have.
So I can look at the properties. Gosh darn it.
Yep, you can also, as Chad just said, execute add version to find a version number if that becomes important.
How do I do that?
In SQL Management Studio, you can use the add version thing to get
Azure? You lost me at SQL Azure.
No, I didn't mean SQL Azure. I said in SQL Studio, SQL Management Studio.
Oh, okay.
Select add version.
Now I've angered SQL Server Studio because that one is long gone.
Oh, that IP address is no longer the IP address.
Yeah. That IP address is dead.
Yeah.
This IP address thing changing, I'm finding to be the #1 most annoying thing here.
Well, you now have a direct line to Patrick, and you can ask him about it.
No, but I don't think that's it. I think that's just Docker, and it means that I'm doing something wrong.
No, because if this was Linux, you'd be browsing to localhost, and it would work. So because they use this over their network. The way the networking works is when you run the container, if you were doing exactly what you were doing and these were Linux containers, you'd browse to localhost : right?
Is that 2 gigs? No, that's like a buttload.
It should be more.
That's more than 2 gigs. That's unlimited.
Yeah, that's presumably the maximum number.
So this is not a memory thing.
Well, it's not a memory. It's not. That means that it's not SQL Server, right? Because that's like a big ass number.
But this is saying.
Yeah, it's in 32 max.
That's weird. Okay, let me ask you this. Hang on now.
SQL Server 14.
Hang on.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to scream hang on at you. Did we just make this from scratch? Because I'm wondering, we made it, but did SQL Server start up fresh such that it would be using the new memory? We don't just change it, right? SQL Server has to restart.
It says it created 3 minutes ago, just then when you did Docker PS, right? Was that before or after you changed?
No, that's a good point.
Pretty sure when you change the Docker Compose file, the tooling takes care of rebooting everything for you.
So sorry about yelling.
But you can stop it and delete it and press run it again if you.
That's okay. This is SQL Server, and let me go over here real quick. I'm just about ready to give up on this and do it another day.
Yeah. I'm sure that the one person left watching us is over it anyway.
Yeah. Well, there's like 3 people here, and everyone else has just left.
Yeah.
You're all very kind, and Damien is going to be so mad at us for this chaos that we have done. Okay, so I'm starting that one up. You said Docker stats.
You're saying, wait, the error said about the memory to execute the query. There was another option on that properties page.
Yeah, I thought the option was copy paste this over and run it yourself. Well, we'll see it in a second.
So you saw like a per query limit in that page? Is that what you're saying, Frederick?
That's a good question.
Like some other option is limiting that query from running? Doesn't Scott Hunter get angry when this goes on too long? Yeah, probably.
Scott Hunter stopped watching the show so long ago. Maximum memory per query. But the point is that I don't understand is that these are not complicated queries. This is just setting up a blog.
Yeah.
We're doing there's some flag somewhere we're forgetting. That's just like the you're an idiot flag for me. Yeah, exactly. Someone's saying, why don't you just do Umbraco? Well, because I'm presenting to the .NET people, the .NET people soon.
Because he's trying to get this demo working for .NET.
I just thought it would be a nice little nod. Plus, this is the kind of stuff, forgetting about .NET Nuke again, this is the kind of stuff that you're going to bump into when you're doing legacy stuff with the kind of apps that you've got all over the place, every day, all the time.
So SQL has hit, what, 2.5, and our limit is now 3 point something?
This is not a memory thing anymore. Look, I've got a ton of memory.
So should we stop and should we basically reboot the web app and make sure that it's not like caching errors and stuff like that, and then give it another hit, and then
it's pretty clear that it is not, because I just restarted it again.
Oh, did you?
Look, now it just changed the web config. Look, this just showed up. See that?
See. Yeah.
See
okay.
that just
Cool.
appear?
Yeah. And so now, and you've still got the same error.
No, it's starting up now.
I see.
That was the refresh. It's fresh now. I think the real thing to be impressed about here is that this Surface Book is working as nicely as it is.
Alter the resource governor.
All right, here we are.
Statistics.
Okay, so what was the gentleman who made it? Alter resource governor reset statistics. Insufficient memory in resource pool. The alternate thing to do is run this yourself to manually execute this script. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So Chad says alter that. So we serve at the pleasure of Chad at this point.
Or Frederick, or some combination of people who are telling us to try things, because we might as well. So
you can see my hands have stopped working.
Yeah.
We're on 219. 63, 219. This is yak shaving right here, friends. We are deep in the yak shaving. 53 at 63.
There apparently were a whole bunch of people around here who didn't know what yak shaving was.
Are you serious? They're young people then, if they are.
And they were like informed over time.
Did we determine whether or not .NET Nuke needs me to make this file for it?
I think we determined that it didn't, because we got past this point. We got past the error we were getting without the database now. So I guess we did I guess, find out that we did not need to create the database.
I still haven't. I don't feel like that's actually happened. Okay, I just did that. Now tell Chad to explain to me what that just did. Because I just said resource governor and it worked, which doesn't mean anything yet. Bucket's a thing now. It's official. Oh, and Chad has no idea. Thank you for letting me run. So a random person with an Einstein avatar just gave me a sequel that I just ran in production.
Yeah, but like, if that was a blog post that said I found this error and I ran this command and it fixed it,
oh yeah. Oh, you got to do it. You got to do it. And if it works, you'll never know.
Yeah.
No, insufficient memory. Look at that. Yeah. Okay, last chance.
So we are hitting the upper limit, the upper bounds, like of stuff, but it doesn't look like we've got there yet. It
doesn't feel like it.
We could put like a redonkulous number into the memory limits and reboot it.
Let's just do this. This is going to be something that's a. Maybe some obvious thing. Nice. It's always nice to find a support thing from 10 years ago at Microsoft. All of these are ancient.
Yeah, that's right, Nick. It's like that's part of the kind of thing here is like nobody can quite believe that it requires that much memory to run the query to create a table. Like,
Thomas Crow keeps telling me to read a blog post above. I don't know what. Paste it in again because I'm not seeing it. And then Frederick says I didn't look at the right memory settings.
Yep, in the other page, yeah. So yeah, Nick, that exact thought is why I thought it was just why we went down the Docker memory limit first, because I assumed what the problem
maximum memory per query.
Maximum memory per query in kilobytes, yeah, 1,024 kilobytes. So I guess if there's a gigantic query that requires more than a...
That's stupid. Who would make a query thing that small? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
A meg? What can you do in a meg? All right, I just made that massive.
Yeah. What I was saying, Nick, was that's the reason I went down the Docker memory limit first, because I assumed it was an issue with SQL Server hitting like effectively the maximum memory available to it inside of its sandbox. Because I didn't think that a single query would require so much to create a database would require so much RAM.
Or something trivial like that too.
But if it is like a single SQL statement that recreates the entire .NET Nuke database, it's probably bigger than a meg, right? Potentially, like all of the tables.
Yeah, but a meg? I've been doing SQL Server for years, and I've never seen that error.
Yeah, me either.
I don't know. I mean, it just seems excessive. I'm loving this one.
Docker stats, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So this is how I was used to show the compare when we were running containers in memory.
Let's see. Sorry.
No.
What? In the yeah, it's annoying.
Yeah, it's annoying.
Do I have to restart it to do that?
Well, if you restart the container.
No, I'm talking about restarting SQL Server. Like maximum memory per query. I don't know how much bigger that needs to be.
Well, surely that's big enough, right?
I was like, that was going to be it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, we can raise the memory of the container to a redunculous level.
You see running values. I don't think it's that, because here's the thing: when you have a memory issue, that you see the internal memory raising and raising and raising.
To hit the maximum, right? And it's not quite.
You know what I mean?
But having said that, we were also a couple of hundred meg. We were at what 950 before we upped it when we were hitting the 1 gig.
And I'm saying, but it doesn't. You don't go through 3 gigs like that. It takes a couple of seconds to build up.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm a little surprised about is that this is a common enough thing that I would have expected .NET Nuke. Here you go.
So William, I'm pretty sure that's what the other memory setting on that page was, the maximum server memory for SQL Server, and it was like
someone having the exact same issue.
So
help. And then
restart SQL Server is interesting, because if you restart SQL Server, because this is a container, the settings go away.
Yeah, that's the problem. Can I restart SQL Server within the
So you would have to. So you can't restart the container. You would have to get SQL Server. So you can't like reboot the machine, basically.
I need to PowerShell into the thing, start it up, and start it up.
You need to restart the
server.
So
I need to go like Docker. But see, this is the thing. If you do that, you have to be able to do it all the time.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that the setting sticks, right? So you have to put it into a script.
Yeah, well, or SQL Server can take it from an environment variable, or there's a configuration file you can modify on disk somewhere. Things like that.
Right. You need to make sure it sticks. So if I go like, give me in here again.
Yeah. So you need to give the -it docker exec -it docker execit, and then the identifier of the container. So the and then whatever you're running.
But now I'm on the SQL Server.
Yes. Now you are, assuming you got the right ID. Yes, you're in the SQL Server. So William, there is nothing else inside that, because of the way Docker works. Yes, you can tell SQL to use the maximum amount of memory available, and you limit the amount of memory that it's going to ever be able to do by telling Docker how much memory a particular service can consume. And there is nothing else running inside the container except SQL Server, because it's a container.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can absolutely. So yes, what you're saying is true, but because of the way containers work, it doesn't matter. Like yes, that is true, and it's fine.
Am I on the wrong machine?
I don't know. Did you choose the right identifier? You know, you're not going to be able to not type Docker.
I know. Anymore. Shut up. Look here. 5D is SQL Server.
Yep. 5. Yep. You need the order is wrong. Yeah.
SQL Server is sitting right there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, go and so
Is it not running as a service?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Go to your. So I briefly touched on this earlier. Go look at the Docker file for this image. And if you look at it, what you'll probably find is rather than registering as a service, what they're doing is the entry point for the SQL Server container is just the exe that needs to run, at which point you can't really do anything about this.
Well, scheisse.
Yeah. So the thing with this is that Windows, you're all used to, see there, /start.
Yeah, they're running it. They're running it at its own.
So you could pass an argument, assuming that start accepts an argument for like all the configuration options you want to pass. You could pass them in via that. But all of the people who are saying like restart via SQL Server Management Studio and all this sort of stuff, you can't do it because what's happening here is the container is running. Its entry point is SQL, the SQL exe, say.
So this makes me feel like even these changes that they're saying I can make aren't getting.
They probably are. Well, if you need to restart SQL Server for them to apply, then they're not.
But at the same time, if I go like this and hit OK.
And then you go to the running values, it says yes, which is.
It says it's fine.
Yeah.
I just changed that to 64 megs, which is, you know, a lot. And what is it trying to do anyway, right?
Yeah.
Not trying to do anything interesting. It's setting up the database for crying out loud.
Yeah. So Richard, the SQL.
Didn't even make them. We made them. We got farther last time, you guys.
So limiting SQL to, so it's not the SQL is taking up too much memory here. It's that it's like if anything, not got enough. And it doesn't matter how much memory SQL takes up, because inside of its own container, because that's the only thing inside the container. There might be a problem with how much memory it's taking up on the host, but that's different. Plus
right.
1 to what Richard said. What did Richard say? Yeah.
I'm just changing in.
And it's entirely possible.
Oh, the settings got entered are in the. Oh, hang on a second. You just pointed out that I was putting them in the master, not in the database itself. No, look, that doesn't have memory. The memory flows all the way down. Frederick was implying
that
it was memory-based. I don't think so. I would point out also that last time we did see the tables fill up completely.
We did. Yeah, so that means that it's quite likely that that what somebody in chat said is that the issue about memory is kind of some sort of red herring. There's something else happening, but we don't really know what that is.
Okay, so my website is gone. Why? My website's gone.
Click and play should bring it back, right?
What's that?
Click and play should bring it back.
Who should bring it back? Clicking play? Is that what you said?
Yeah, click and play in Visual Studio should bring it back. Frederick knows.
Frederick's saying that they're persisted. You're right. They're only persisted until I delete the Docker thing, and then it's gone.
Yeah. But then, are you also, Richard, are you also, Frederick, implying that you don't have to restart SQL Server for them to take effect? That might be true. I have no idea.
But no matter, let's make sure that we all understand that no matter what is wrong, we need to make sure that it is, we can put the system back into that state.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, Frederick, I guess if they are, okay, you're right. You could say Docker stop, which would stop this container.
Right, but we need to make it so it's idempotent, right?
Yeah. Well, no, if you do Docker stop and then start the same container without creating a new one, it will be the same one. The files will still exist on disk, so it will effectively restart SQL Server. So
additionally, the files that we're putting on here currently are still in dev mode. So at some point we would need to move from, now we're back here.
Nice.
Remember this?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we understand what happened there, we should be able to go back and remove the install date.
So there's an interesting kind of point, Frederick, in that what you guys are kind of seeing here. So when you look at the default configuration that ASP.NET Core scaffolds for you, where it says use a file, then override with environment variables, right? Part of the reason that we scaffold that type of config by default for you is because if you try and run applications inside Docker, you often very quickly get to the point where you really need to override something when it's running in a container. And environment variables are the easiest, most convenient way of doing that. They're trivial to set inside the Docker Compose file. They're trivial to set when you're running the thing manually or anywhere. However, for software that was not designed to run inside a container, and like in Nginx, for example, typically, or they are config files or reg keys in Windows or something like that that define these settings. And they're much harder in Docker land for you to be able to change. You need to play around with how to change them. It's all doable. You can typically make it work. It just requires a few more steps. And that's why there are a lot of people, and so you start to see us kind of scaffolding you things that lead you more to success in this type of area.
Suggesting resource governor.
Late to this party, what's going on here? Man.
I don't know, man.
I don't think anybody knows anymore, dude.
Yeah, resource governor's off.
Yeah, okay. Cool.
So over here, what's happening? No tables showing up. And now we're in the wizard. Okay, this is a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
Last try, and then we're done. Okay, because I have a life and you have a life.
Mm-hmm.
But I am frustrated because I feel like I've been sitting at 80%.
Yeah.
Like I'm at 80% with a pretty amazing demo and a lot of additional knowledge I didn't have before.
Yeah, absolutely. You can change there are tricks to play the config files, to modify the config files that you can do in lieu of environment variables. I guess my point wasn't that you can't do it. It was that it's much more convenient when things are settable via environment variables. Not that it wasn't possible to do via config files or anything else. For example, if we found there was some setting inside SQL Server we had to set, and there was some config file you could change to make that happen, then what we would do here is create a Docker file that inherits from the SQL one. We would modify that config file in a build command, and we would use our own image. Right? That would absolutely work. Same if it was a reg key configuration or something like that.
One thing that's interesting here, we did change the minimum memory per query. The web config keeps changing itself.
Mm-hmm.
And putting values in that are old.
Yeah.
So it's getting information. There it is. See, there's my password.
Mm-hmm.
That means that yep, see this here?
That's the old IP address?
That's the old IP address.
And it's not getting a new one. Oh,
you're getting that IP address because it's pulling it out of here, and because now, did we ever confirm that the name is usable?
Yeah, we said we have the name in the connection string, right?
What did we end up calling it?
New SQL Server, I think, without the dot. Yeah, pretty sure we verified that was the case because we put that into a connection string that worked in the text.
Pointing out that install file keeps happening.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Right, and then there you go. My file's gone again. See, my web server just died again.
When you modified a file?
When I modified the compose. Is that what's happening?
When you modify, yeah, it does try and detect when it should restart. So whatever file.
Okay, so I modified the compose, and then it tosses it.
Yeah, and it'll restart it. It won't rebuild it necessarily, but it'll restart the container, I believe. Okay. It might rebuild it too, and I'm not sure. It depends on which one.
Okay, so there's the new IP address. Interesting. Someone's saying turn on the resource governor. I shouldn't have to do stuff like this.
I'm glad you're learning a lot, dude. That's good to know.
Who, me?
People in chat. You too, I guess. You're learning a lot. That's good too.
This is such classic yak shaving, though, where it's like some crazy SQL server. Everything I'm doing is correct. This should not be a problem. It should have just worked. And the thing that's frustrating about this is that I got to this point in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like 80-20 rule.
I got to this point in 15 minutes, and now I am stuck at this point for the last 2 hours.
Yeah.
So Thomas is suggesting that we turn on the resource governor. It's off now, and raise the memory grant percentage up to.
Resource governor is off at the moment.
Yeah, but he's suggesting we turn it on.
Yeah. So do we even bother calling this a community stand-up, or do we just leave it on YouTube?
I don't know what we do. I think we delete this video and we never speak of it again.
Fair enough. We can do that. So all of you that are watching, it's the 3 of you that have managed to stick with us.
There you go. So see the CPU just popped up there on the web, which means it probably just, see? Here we go. So this is our error, everyone. This is where we always get with lots of memory. CPU, this is not a CPU issue. So let's just make sure that we understand and confirm a couple of things, okay?
Yeah. So I guess the very last thing we should do before we continue, before we like kill it all, is to go and manually run that script to create the whole database and then see if we get all the way through. So that would be
I won't do that. I want you to just see this and just go over a couple things with me. We have 2 machines running. Okay. The SQL server is here, and the website is here. So SQL server is 63.219. Okay.
Yep.
All right. The web config just got modified by them. It's currently using the name. Okay.
Yep. Sorry,
presumably
I have to plug it in or it's going to go to sleep. So just going to do that while you.
You better do that quick. Presumably, I could then go docker exec -it command and go over to the website, which is on 55. Now I'm here. .NET SQL Server. What do we call it? .NET Nuke SQL?
I think it was, I don't remember. We'll have to just look.
Oh, we call it .NET Nuke SQL Server.
So you can't ping it, but you can ping the IP address.
So the IP address is what?
You had it, well, it was in this console that you had it.
19.
What?
When you're in the new console and you've done the remote thing like this, Docker gets confused. Okay, so I would propose that it's still having problems
with the name resolution. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. We confirmed that. I don't think the name resolution. There's something wrong with name resolution.
Yeah, so we did see, Chad, that he was creating data tables at one point, but it hasn't for a while now. The whole time we've been getting
hasn't made data tables in a while, but it did make them once. Now, if we go back to Docker, I just freaking deleted my whole thing and lost all of that stuff.
And so it's kind of interesting. Like if the IP address, if the name is not working, and we did try that as the thing we've been connecting to, then what we're getting, are we in a situation here where it's something is incorrectly throwing an error because it can't connect? Like it's assuming a memory error or something?
So if I go back down into their config, their .NET install nuke thing, keeping in mind that the SQL Server is the only thing that stayed up the whole time here. Here I've just gone and edited both of those and pasted in those directly. Okay. Let's see if the website's still running.
When we say SQL error, Chad, we mean it's coming from somewhere in the SQL libraries, right? Like it's a SQL exception.
And it appears that it is coming from the SQL Server, so that's why we spent so much time.
His question was, how are we getting one of those if we can't connect to the database?
No, that's a valid point. That would imply we can connect to the database.
Yeah.
And this is a legitimate error.
Yeah.
I want to point out that I just hit a refresh, so it is doing something and it comes back very quickly. So SQL is replying that very quickly here. Now, theoretically, right, I could grab all of this stuff and paste it into SQL Server. That is a metric. This is an interesting perspective. Look at this.
What's that?
This is freaking huge.
Yeah, that's why when people said that to up the specific,
I had no
query
idea
limit,
that was that big.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of thought maybe that was the problem when we hit that specific 1 meg query limit.
And Frederick points out that we don't know if it's coming from SQL Server. It could be the client library.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's think about that for a second.
So yeah, that's right. Like, and we did see the tables creating, which theoretically, well, I guess, which presumably means at some point we did get past this problem. And I don't know if it was because of the IP address thing, because it was when we were using the IP address that it was successful. But I don't see why that would be the case.
Yeah, and DNN has been around for 1 million years. There's no reason for this.
An error that we were getting was on the when the name didn't work, was back on the original screen, and on there it was saying cannot connect to database. Like you weren't getting to proceed with installation unless you're, by refreshing this page and not going back to entering account information, you're skipping.
We might be getting something that's cached.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think we can agree that this is insanely long and makes no sense.
Yeah.
No, this is not insanely long. It's repeated over and over again. There you go. Look. There's nested errors here. There's already an object laying this in the data.
So go back to the database. Does it? Oh, it has a bunch of. So drop .NET Nuke, drop the database, and go
Interesting
again.
though, because it doesn't actually.
Well, it doesn't have tables, but maybe it's got functions and stuff. But so just delete the thing, and then start again. Check the SQL Server logs. Yeah, we could probably do that after we run it again. Now that we've deleted the database.
We should just. The problem is that the name stuff doesn't work. We shouldn't have to keep doing this IP address nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, we should do an isolated test at some point to prove to ourselves whether or not it is or is not
working. The root issue here is that we're not treating this like it's Docker.
That is true.
This thing needs to be idempotent. It needs to be clean. It needs to not break all the time. Yeah, see, this is cached or something. This is coming from God knows.
Can you go back to the page 1 of the wizard then?
No, I just started there.
No, you didn't. Page 1 of the wizard is when you enter all your information, right? This is starting every time you come in here. It just starts the progress bar straight away. Whereas in previous attempts, in particular the one that succeeded, you had a page which said, "What are your SQL Server details?"
I understand that, and I'm telling you that it's in another div, and they're not letting me see that div.
I see. Huh. They're like those weird CSS like layout problems are happening.
Yeah. Okay. So where do you want to look at the logs? There you go. So I'm back here now. There's also some CSS issues going on, let's be frank.
So in here we want to put username. Oh, that's the .NET Nuke information password, right?
Yeah. Last try. Why do you ever do this?
Yeah.
Last try. Last try. That's
we've done that 4 or 5 times this go. Is that the right IP address there?
Yes.
Do we
219? 219, yes.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Okay.
.NET Client SQL login failed.
Where's that? Where's
security, user defined?
There. Oh, wow. I see.
Okay. Yeah, there's all sorts of CSS problems here.
Yeah, I see.
Verifying database connection. This is where we got before. We went over here, we hit refresh.
Yeah, and I think
databases started showing up.
We started to see tables in a database.
But this gets to the question about, do we need to make the database first? Unable to connect the database.
Yeah, okay. So then in the previous, and then we went and created the database. So we did need to create that, and then we had a whole bunch of problems.
Which seems odd because, again, knowing these people, you'd think they just make the database for you.
Yeah. Okay, so now presumably we can continue again, and it goes this time.
And now we got here.
Yeah.
Now we come back. We go like this. We open up tables, and it's full of stuff.
Yeah. So this is.
We have now. Okay, good. This is as far as we've ever gotten. We have a ton of memory.
Yeah. So
lots of hard drive space. Look, see the hard drive going nuts.
yeah, and so
This is good.
So I think
hang on. .NET stats. Look, so there's the SQL Server.
Yeah.
See the working set?
Yeah.
It's getting higher. We have a headroom of 3, right?
Yeah, we had 3.1 or something we said it to.
So that should be enough. What were you going to say?
So Nick made a valid point, which is that on most shared hosts, you don't have permissions to create databases, so you have to go create it manually first.
Look at the working set.
Optimized for that.
It just dropped. 5D is the SQL Server, right?
So we were instantly getting to 18% failure before, right? So what I was going to say a minute ago was that
this implies it might work, actually.
Yeah, it is. I think it might, and I think what was happening before is something that was happening, which was skipping us ahead in the like install progress without letting us go back and configure everything properly. So it was trying to like constantly connect to the wrong IP address or something like that was happening.
Yeah.
And as well as the fact that we did see those like existing database object errors was kind of interesting as well. It means the very first time that this failed, we probably got existing entries. We probably got like the first few things succeeded, like functions and stuff that were hidden behind folders in the server explorer.
Which gets to the we should have cleaned it up first perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you would have thought that was in a transaction, but maybe the type of the memory exception that we got in the very beginning. I'm wondering if maybe because it was a memory exception back in the very beginning, it didn't get a chance to clean up or something stupid like that.
Now it's switched to the web server doing the work. See the CPU now? I also want to point out that we still, even if we solve this and this works, this is SQL Server for production. Even if this thing works, we still have to solve the problem of how do we make it work every time? And I think it comes down to the root issue of the using the name versus the IP address.
Yeah. So we need to talk to the Windows containers folks and say, hey.
Or the Docker folks, depending on how they set up the Hyper-V stuff.
Yeah, I think this one, I'm pretty sure there has been many a meeting on this, and it'll just be a matter of us like catching up. And I think it's a Windows containers thing, and the people who basically implement Docker on Windows, it's just on their list of things to do, and it's not yet working, I think, because of deep technical.
Okay, so you're saying that there might be a DNS lookup issue for for Docker for Windows containers.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, and it's specific to Windows containers, and it's something they know about, and it's on their logged fix, and they just haven't quite.
And see, like at this moment right now, where CPU is low, does this mean it's failing? Does it mean it's trying to look up?
Yeah, I mean, there's no, like what's going over there. There's no logs. There's no anything. It's just a timer ticking by.
Right. So we don't know what's going on. It's not JavaScript. I felt like we were doing something there for a moment.
I felt like we were there just now.
And again, if we knew .NET Nuke, we'd go in here and we'd go, here you go, look, they have an event log. See, look, login success, user created admin alert.
Yep.
People, do you all agree that this has something to do with that? It all comes down to the IP address thing.
Yeah, a lot of it. Now, I wonder here with this install stuck, is it now only stuck because the page can't refresh because of those CSS layout-y type problems that we've been hitting, or is it just really sitting there stuck as well?
Somebody was asking if nothing has been commented on since I commented on it. Can you connect to localhost as you would with a Linux container?
No, that's the problem.
No, you cannot. That's a containers limitation. You have to, there's Hyper-V underneath this, so there's an IP. There's if I look here for my own personal network, look, there's the Docker internal network that is off in 10 dot whatever. And then there's this container network that's 172.120.25. See this? So this 172.25, that's that's like special Hyper-V network world.
Yep.
So I feel like it's kind of, now what should we do at this point?
I mean, it appears to be working. I'm not sure why
Well, I mean, I feel like we're in the middle of a timeout at this point.
Yeah.
Should I hit refresh or should I try another browser?
I don't know. Like, it's hard to say here, right? Like, you also don't want to kill this thing in the middle of it running. I mean, you could try rebrowsing to not to that, just to the IP address.
Well, too late. I've already screwed up.
Yeah, because I'm wondering if maybe it's just basically done and the web page is broken because it's been broken for ages and we can't tell.
This is a brand new release, though. See there? That's the
Yep, that was SQL Server using a bunch of memory and then it dropped right back down, did it?
Yeah. Making web-based installers for sites like this is hard.
Yeah.
I remember trying to do this for DOS blog.
Yeah.
Like even what WordPress does is kind of a miracle. You know what I mean?
What does Orchard do?
Someone is saying here, Kentico is another .NET CMS, does similar stuff where there's just a ton of poking around at the database. But again, this is at 0%. If it was doing it right.
Yeah, so if you just go to a new tab or something,
we lost a container.
Okay, so let's go Docker PS -A.
See? Look,
yeah.
So something crashed and we lost the whole thing.
Yeah, Docker PS -A, and we'll see what that container was that died, and then we'll try Docker logs. Which one was it that died? Was it the
top one?
Huh?
55.
Top one? I see. Yep.
What's going on?
Oh, there's just nothing. It's working, and there's nothing there to give you.
So
there's no output. It doesn't log anything to the console.
What happened?
So the problem
that means that an exception happened in the website, which then caused it to die.
Yeah, it appears to be the case. Something happened to cause the website to die, and the container stopped. SQL Server is fine, and
it's going to have another IP address when it starts, isn't it?
Probably, but it should still be able to connect to the database fine because the database didn't die, right?
Right. The database has been going for an hour now.
Yeah. So so the reason you don't see anything in Docker logs is because it's only going to be able to collect stuff that gets like written to console or things like that. But in a normal Windows, in a normal .NET web application, that's not the way things work. Not in core, that's the case, but not in normal .NET.
You'd like to get the event viewer.
Yeah, basically. And yeah, that's right. And how do you do that? And I don't know the answer to that question. So if you just browse just to the straight up IP address.
I'm doing that now.
Yeah.
And you can see it thinking. And doesn't this get to the point about how important it is to have good logging in your applications? Like,
absolutely.
We're looking at a slightly. Holy crap! Look.
Yeah. So that stuff that Damien's been talking about is super important. Yeah. So what I kind of half suspect happened was.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Can we have a moment of silence? No, I mean, you just blew right through that. We've been working on this for 2 hours and we just got it open. And then you were like, well, no, dude, like it came up.
Yeah.
Okay, now go ahead.
So the reason I was, I guess, somewhat less than explosive at that moment was I kind of suspected that the install had worked, but the UI was just failing to tell us that it had worked for all that time. But that doesn't explain why the web container died and started up again, unless that was a VS.
Let's do what Frederick said. No PowerShell.
And the chat goes wild.
Now look, container is not running.
Yeah.
Here's something that's interesting. It's coming up.
PS for containers.
Look, and then it stops again.
Problem is, could we replicate our success? We're going to do another live stream tomorrow where we show you, just redo exactly what we did from the beginning.
I'll spend tomorrow morning on the thing, but I want to point out that it's failing.
Yeah.
Look, here it is running.
Yep.
But then it fails. So something's dying.
Yeah.
It's a completely it's not an ASP.NET exception. It's something bigger than that.
Yeah, we need to what you need to do then is start the container and then exec into it and straight away and try and like basically navigate around and try and find the right logs and things like that, right? Well, like find the PowerShell commandlet to tell you what the event viewer's got in it.
That's get event log name application.
Yeah.
And that's 17th. Failed to collect hardware data, blah, blah, blah. There's nothing interesting in there.
Nothing in there. So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing here. We're not really running the container interactively, but we're started the container and then execed into it, and the command that we executed was PowerShell, and so now we're in PowerShell inside the web container, and we can do whatever you want to do with PowerShell to inspect the machine. So it's also possible. Here. It's actually probable that .NET Nuke logs to a file inside our solution somewhere, and we just don't know where it is. Does anybody in here know if .NET Nuke just logs to a file?
Yes.
What?
No, it died again.
Oh, did the containers?
Does this website keep dying? No, hang on, it's still going.
Yes.
I need a .NET Nuke expert.
So .NET Nuke has a log viewer. If this is caused by .NET Nuke, how do you see that log viewer? Is it a URL? Like, is it a route that you can hit? A log table in the database, or what?
Dash newest.
We'll have to do this again with Charles Nurse or somebody. You can check it from the admin dashboard on the website. So like if you go to the website, you log in with the admin password that you set, and then you can see all the logs from .NET Nuke to see if .NET Nuke was dying for a reason. It feels like if .NET Nuke was dying, it wouldn't be bringing down the container, but maybe.
Where was our Frederick? Help me out here again.
Dash newest is what he was suggesting.
I think it was application, or was it system?
Oh.
System. Yeah, this is where I got in trouble last time. I never stopped.
So he was saying that you can do dash newest 50 to show just the newest 50 to the get event log command. And then like dash newest space 50, like give it a, or is that error saying that there's not a thing? Maybe
saying there is no thing called newest.
Yeah, fair enough.
Oh, my bad.
Okay, right. Cool. Okay, so if you go to the database, so presumably if there's a view in the website that can show you logs, it's presumably also a database table in the database that is called logs or something similar, which has stuff in it, right?
Yeah, hang
on. Looks like people in chat are saying the same thing. So Thomas, inside the web container, it runs an exe, which basically starts IIS and runs just your app. And I believe it dies if your web process dies, because that's typically what you want with containers. Docker has features to spin containers back up if they die. So you don't need IIS managing your worker process the same way that you would on a normal IIS server. If this was like full IIS running, you might not even notice that this was happening, because the worker process, if it was the worker process dying, the IIS was restarting it, right?
Here's the website. Look.
Yeah.
And this is where we usually end up dying.
So, yeah. But there's no event. Doesn't appear to be any event log events that are helping you out. So DNN_event log, is that the table name?
Oh.
In the database, in the .NET Nuke database, or is that the?
Or is that a database?
Or is it a database table that you're telling me that name for, or is it an event?
Yeah, that's a database, not a.
Okay. So database. Go if you've got SQL Management Studio open there, right?
Look.
Yeah, it's working. Everything's great. So you've already got an admin password, right? Because you said you created one when you created the thing. I think you set it to the same thing as the database password.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you did. Went back in that very first page that we ever made.
the problem, though?
One of my first jobs was building a big, complicated .NET Nuke web, like a big custom .NET Nuke application. And I remember nothing now, I realize. I suspect .NET Nuke has now evolved so much since then.
No, it's a whole universe now. Check it out.
Yeah.
See, everything's there. Applications start.
But there's no errors like to explain why.
But now it says an email with your details. I'm like,
So if you go to log in, does anybody know what the admin username is? Is it just like admin or something? And you put fancy pants in? Admin user is host is the username, and super fancy pants is the password. Cool. Probably suppress those memories, maybe. One of the guys that worked on it with me actually lives here in Seattle now. I'll have to go talk to him about it again.
Who, Andrew, or is that?
No.
See?
Well, Andrew does live here, yeah, and he worked on .NET Nuke as well. But I was talking about a guy who worked on my first like actual real job. One of my first real jobs out of university was working on a .NET Nuke site.
And here you go. See, now it says stuff like module doesn't exist.
Yeah. Is that so there's like a path problem? Maybe because of the mounted. Is this because of the volume mount?
Well, see, it says desktop modules. That's over here.
Yeah. So is there a problem here with like the way we volume
now it wants
files?
admin. There's no tabs. See?
Yeah.
See where it says tabs?
Yeah. Yeah. In the path that it was looking for.
Right. There's all these modules that are up here. Oh, hang on a second. I haven't opened up .NET Core. I think I need to open up .NET Platform No Tests, and that's where all the modules are. I think I deployed the tiniest .NET Nuke.
Oh, which is why this stuff won't. Which is why it wouldn't be able to find a bunch of stuff.
As opposed to like the one that has all the stuff.
Yeah. So presumably, if you logged in as a normal user, you wouldn't even see these things. But because you're an admin, you can see.
No, to be clear. But what I'm saying is, there's other stuff to deploy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's mounting your local directory, right? So changing the solution that you have open in Visual Studio doesn't necessarily change.
It's just no .NET. So .NET Nuke. Yeah, look, .NET Nuke has up here. See these here? They're all different views on the same thing.
Yeah.
I opened Core and deployed Core. I need to go and deploy something larger.
Yep.
To see, look, basic features is unavailable.
Yeah, because nothing is available because you're only running .NET Nuke Core. Well, that's still a lot more than you had running 2 hours ago.
Oh, yeah. So I think we're good. All right, cool. So that's pretty neat. We should probably stop, otherwise we'll be here all night.
Yeah, probably. I'm kind of amazed that the number of people watching is still relatively the same as last time I looked at the number.
Okay, well, so what did we learn? I don't know.
I don't know.
We learned what? What's our conclusion here?
Well, we did a few things. We learned that it was actually very easy to get SQL Server running and connected to it once we knew what we were doing.
We learned that the things that we were dealing with were IP addresses and passwords and basic stuff.
Yeah.
And the thing that we have yet to solve is if the IP address changes a lot, then yeah, you have to change connection strings a lot, which is inconvenient.
Yes.
We learned you can run pretty much any application in a container.
Yeah. We learned that you should read the manual occasionally, at least skim it.
I should probably have read something, given that I did all of this without reading anything at all about
either .NET Nuke or Docker.
That was a little dumb.
Neither of us knew anything about .NET Nuke, but we still managed to make something work.
And if we can configure if we can get the IP address changing thing to change, then getting .NET Nuke running on Docker should be as easy as having a correct Docker file, and then you just go.
Yeah. And I think we're also finding that everybody in the chat is empathetic and deals with this every day. The
question is, Duncan pointed out that the increasing of the memory limit did have some significance.
Yeah, I wonder if when we
YAML.
Yeah, I think we hit that like memory limit, And then we ended up in this refresh problem where we never really got another clean run after we increased that limit.
So then, here Satish just points out, then we could try NOP commerce, NOP commerce. We could try Braco. We could try, Kentico.
Yeah, we can do a bunch more videos where we do a bunch of this stuff. We find like big full .NET things and run them and see how they work and try and get.
So let's figure out let's you and I take from this. Let's you and I figure out the name issue, the DNS stuff.
Yep.
We'll explore the memory limit stuff and why we were getting that SQL Server database, the SQL Server error. I don't know. I'll leave this as it is and keep poking around, and then I'll try to deploy a more complete version of this application. If there's a .NET Nuke person around who wants to play with me, email me, and we can try. Because right now I'm doing all of this from the complete source of .NET Nuke, which may be excessive. I don't need to be building .NET Nuke proper. I'm not a .NET Nuke core dev.
Yeah.
I would like to get an instance of this running in Docker. Maybe I need to be doing it not from Visual Studio. I need to be doing it from the command line.
So we want to just leave this video on YouTube and not put it on the live.asp.net site, or is that?
Let's see what Damien says. Let's see what Damien says.
Because it's not really a
Can't
stand-up.
hurt.
This is more of just a live debugging.
No. Yeah, well, and if you like live debugging sessions, talk to us on Twitter. Do you want them on Twitch? Do you want them on YouTube? Do you want them on Aerial Spaces? What? Yeah,
all you guys that want to see us more, like see more of just like live coding and debugging, tweet me and sort and stuff. We have we actually emailed about this not long ago, right?
Should we apologize for sucking?
That should be like a foregone apology at the beginning. Is I'm sorry, we're not as smart as you all think we are. I guess
we struggle with the same stuff that you struggle with, and there's only so much you can do with these things.
Yeah.
All right. I will talk to you later. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. See you guys later.
Dramatic zoom out.
Oh, dramatic zoom out. I've forgotten.
Bye. You do it? Because all I can do. There you go.